Welcome in, everybody. Sorry for the last minute live. Hello, Marie, my dear. How are you? Sassy Granny, Jerry Lynn, welcome in. Nice to see everybody. It's not our regular time. I've been out getting my car fixed all day. Did a video this morning that didn't really do well. You guys don't like the videos, apparently. You like the lives. So we'll show that here in a second. We're going to go through the newest updates with Spencer Tepe case. I'm sure some of you guys have seen it already. How y'all doing, by the way? How y'all doing? You just made my night. Oh, thank you, honey. Nice to see you here. Nice to see you here. Say thank you to our mod, Marie. Thank you, Marie, honey, for being here. I didn't even let everybody know. I just got home. I haven't even eaten all day. But this was important, so let's watch. We're going to do the breaking news updates. Was he stalked? They found evidence in the home. Did you hear all that? Crazy case. Let's get at it. Let's get at it now. And then I will do the best. I don't know yet tomorrow what time, but we will be back tomorrow. You can be a mod. Absolutely, you can be a mod, Jerry Lynn. Do you want to email me, honey? Here, I'll send you my email. Yeah, you can absolutely be a mod, honey. Thank you for that. Okay, let's watch this breaking news.
Price is right now. We'll get you right back to the game. There's an update on a major case in Columbus. Columbus Division of Police providing an update. Elaine Bryant is at the podium
about it. So just wanted to go over a little bit of the timeline. On December 30th, 2025, at approximately 10:04 a.m., Columbus Police Patrol officers were dispatched to the 1400 block of North 4th Street on a well-being check. Officers arrived at the scene and located the 2 adult victims suffering from apparent gunshot wounds. We now know that they were identified as Mr. Spencer Tepe and Mrs. Monique Tepe. Their 2 small children were also found in the residence, physically unharmed. On January 10th, 2026, detectives filed warrants charging Michael D. McKee, 39, with 2 counts of murder in the deaths of Spencer and Monique Tepe. Mr. McKee was arrested in Rockford, Illinois without incident. He's currently incarcerated in the Winnebago County Jail and awaiting extradition to Columbus. We believe at this point, we have the person responsible for the murders of Monique and Spencer Tepe in custody, and that person is Michael McKee. This is still an active and ongoing investigation. Detectives are still going through evidence, tips, and videos. We can't speak to all the specific details related to this case, so we don't want to jeopardize the ultimate goal of conviction. But what we can say, this was a targeted attack. This was a domestic violence related attack. As we know, McKee is the ex-husband of Monique Tepe.
This was a targeted attack. Sure seemed like it, doesn't it?
We can say that we have the suspect's vehicle on neighborhood video surveillance arriving just before the murders and leaving shortly after. Detectives were able to link this vehicle to McKee. The vehicle was located in Rockford, Illinois, and evidence was found that showed McKee in possession of the vehicle before and after the homicides. We can also say that multiple weapons were taken from the property of McKee. And there's a preliminary link from our NIBIN to one of the weapons that ties it to the homicides.
One of the weapons that ties it to the homicides. In other words, they got the gun. They got the gun. Oh my God, they did a good job. Let's go.
I want to say that our detectives work around the clock to be able to solve this case. But it's equally important to know that while this is gaining national attention, we work around the clock to solve all of our homicide cases. I'd like to bring the mayor up now to say a few words.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you all for joining us this morning. I want to thank Chief Bryant, the women and men of the homicide division who have done an incredible job on this case and so many other cases, 100 cases solved in 2025 because of their tireless work and professionalism and tips and information from the community that helped us achieve such incredible solve rates. I want to thank also members of the press for sharing timely information, including the video footage of the person of interest that we know now is Mr. McKee. Members of the community for supporting CPD's investigation and for continuing to pray and support the Tepe family, particularly these little children. Just want to take a moment to express gratitude, grief, and resolve, not only for myself, but for the entire Columbus community. Grateful to the Division of Police for their professionalism and persistence, and for their tireless work and collaboration that led to this arrest. You followed the facts and evaluated every credible lead with intentionality, integrity, and care for the victims and their families. I also want to thank members of the community who stepped forward with video footage and tips.
Okay, Tracy Townsend and Colin Dorsey here. We have been bringing you live coverage of Elaine Bryant and Andrew Gidler talking about the Tepe murders. We are covering this because it has gained national attention. We're going to take our coverage over onto 10 TV Plus.
Right, that's free to download right now in your TV. Put it on there for free. But for now, our Price is Right viewers will send you back to regular
And
programming.
our residents. I pray this collaboration will
Welcome in, everybody.
tool for solving crime when it does occur. The tips
Oh,
that
no,
were submitted
honey.
in this
I'm
case
sorry,
matter.
honey.
And I'm grateful to the rest
I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry to hear that. Get better. But I'm glad you came in to say hi. Thank you.
residents and businesses who shared information. As Chief described, this was a targeted domestic violence attack that resulted in the deaths of 2 people and irreparably changed the lives of their children, families, colleagues, and friends. Our hearts remain with Spencer and Monique, their loved ones, and especially the children impacted by this unimaginable loss. As this case now moves through the criminal justice process, we'll continue to respect this investigation and allow investigators and prosecutors to do their work. As Chief said, we will not do or say anything that will compromise the likelihood of a conviction. One thing we can still offer this family is the best possible chance at a conviction and justice for this unspeakable crime. We could also continue to lift up this family in our thoughts and prayers. I will continue to lift up every one of the 84 families that lost a loved one due to violence in 2025. And I know the Chief and the Division of Police will too, in their thoughts and their actions. I know this case has taken on national interest, but I want to tell each of these families, these 84 families, CPD pursues every case with the same intensity, commitment, and resolve. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, sir.
84 victims? Who are the 84 victims? Did he just say that? Am I hearing something?
We'll take any questions at this time.
Chief, can you comment on a motive in this case? I mean, why did he allegedly kill Monique and Spencer and also leave the children alive?
At this time, we cannot comment on a motive. Again, part of the investigation.
Did you find any other evidence in his home in Lincoln Park?
What I can tell you is that we did search his property and we have evidence, but I can't speak to any specific evidence.
You said there were no signs.
Can you tell us which police agency arrested him and where he was taken into custody in Rockford?
Sure. This case is a great example of partnerships. So our partners with Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, federal agents, took him into custody very close to his place of employment.
What can you tell us about McKee's whereabouts between the day of the crime and the day he was picked up?
Part of the investigation, unfortunately, as we talked about, we're not able to share specifics. But what we can tell you is that we have evidence that he was there during the time of the actual homicides.
You said there were no signs of forced entry. Are you able to say any more about how he got into the house?
Unfortunately, we're not able to talk about that at this moment.
Is there any indication he had interactions with the kids, or the kids may have seen or heard anything at this point?
We don't have that information. Again, part of the investigation, there's just certain things we can't talk about.
Neighbors had said that they had seen McKee in the neighborhood and in front of the Tepe home days before the homicide. Can you confirm that?
At this time, we're unable to talk about specific information. But again, when we get additional information, we'll be more happy to share it to the public.
I know this is an ongoing investigation. I don't know if you can say this, but obviously they were divorced. Are you able to say anything about their relationship after that divorce? It was in 2017. Were they civil? I know he had a second wife as well.
Again, there is the investigation is still ongoing. Just understand, we're still collecting information. We're still going through a lot of evidence, and there's just some things that we can't speak to right now.
Can you talk about the extradition? Will you be going to Rockford and pick him up, and when will that happen?
I'll let you speak to that.
Sure. We have policy related to extraditions. Felony warrants out of state are primarily handled by extradition companies. And so the determination of whether or not it will be detectives from Columbus or an outside entity, likely an outside entity, but the logistics are being worked out as we speak.
Wow, I never knew that. I've never heard of extradition companies. but they have evidence that ties him to the murders, and they have the gun. So it seems to me like a slam dunk. Do you think he's going to plead? Well, he already pled not guilty. Once he's extradited and has time to talk to a lawyer, think he's still going to go non-guilty?
Any idea when that will happen?
I don't know when that will happen.
What kind of weapons did you find in his home?
We can't speak to specific weapons, but we did recover multiple weapons from the home, from his property.
How quickly was McKee a suspect? I know that family told us they pretty much assumed that he was behind this crime.
What I can tell you is that every piece of evidence, every tip that we received, we immediately began to investigate it. So I can't give you a specific timeline, but any information that came in was immediately evaluated and investigated.
Are you able to say about how many tips you received? Obviously, people became really attached to this case.
Do you know specific numbers?
While we don't have an exact number of the amount of tips that came in, because some of them were the same or similar. So it was numerous, and it was from multiple sources, which was greatly appreciated from the community, the media, the past individuals that were knowledgeable and familiar with the family, and then the residents of the area, which ultimately led us to this day right now.
Can you believe that's in that video? Sorry, go ahead.
We know digital forensics and DNA play a big role in investigations these days, but it doesn't happen in 60 minutes with commercial breaks. Is there any sense of the timeline of when some of that information will become available to you guys through that testing?
We're continuously looking for information, waiting for information. Unfortunately, we can't give you a specific timeline, but we're continuously working to get that information in.
The family mentioned that Monique previously said that he had been abusive towards her in the past. Was there any evidence or indication of that prior to this incident?
What I can tell you is that we did not have any reports, and we did not have any information related to any type of incidents regarding the ex-husband and Monique.
Can you tell us if McKee and Mrs. Tepe had any contact leading up to this incident, months, weeks?
Any stalking concerns there?
Again, what we can share with you, we are sharing with you. There are some things that we can't share for investigative purposes, but what I can tell you again is that we didn't have any reports or anything linked to that specific location as it relates to the ex-husband and Monique Tepe.
Do you believe he's the person in the video that you shared, the person of interest?
We do.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to an update from the city of Columbus, from the mayor, and from Columbus Division of Police Chief Liane Bryant. The big headline there is that they did find multiple weapons, they say, from Michael McKee's property there in Chicago.
Right. And what we don't know are the kinds of weapons. That was something that Chief Bryant said that's still part of the investigation. But one thing that she did talk about is that one of the weapons that they obtained from that did come back in a NIBIN report. And that is the one that they believe could be tied to that. Now, the NIBIN system, that is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. That's been around now for almost 30 years.
And so they found that. The other point that we wanted to highlight is the issue of extradition, because as you know, as we've reported, and you were reporting this morning over by the corrections facility, they're talking about how and when they're going to bring McKee back.
Right. And as you heard there, we did get a bit of an update on how and when that could happen. The thing is, we still don't know the how. That was not an answer we did get today, but we did get some clarification on the process in which he would be back here. CPD has a policy on how they transport felony assault charge or felony charged suspects in these cases. It sounds like this will likely be outsourced to a private transport company who will bring him back from Rockford, and that is when he would face charges here in Franklin County, because Monday, when he appeared in that Winnebago County Circuit Court, that's when he waived his extradition, which means he will come back to face those charges in Franklin County. We are kind of in that holding pattern. We don't know when he'll get back. That's really the next step in all of this.
And in addition to what they could talk about in terms of the police, the other interesting fact is that the mayor of Columbus talked about the issue of solving these kinds of crimes. In fact, that there are 84 and that they spend 24 hours there working on all of these cases. And I was struck by the fact that he said tips mattered. This hearing from the community, that video that we were showing our viewers here on 10 TV Plus and on 10 TV of the person of interest.
Right. And when we talk about the tips and the video that came into play of this, of course, we know that video that Columbus Police released back on the 5th. That is what they really say played a big part in that. That's that car that they say was there before and after that call. They could see leaving in that video, and that is the car that they tracked all the way back to Rockford, Illinois, that was registered to McKee's name.
All right. So we have covered the extradition. We're still waiting for some specifics on that. Perhaps you were unfamiliar with this, but they have extradition companies. That's who they're going to work with. Weapons, multiple weapons were taken from McKee's property. They are calling this a targeted attack, a domestic violence related attack. Lots of things to uncover as they are working this. We are going to continue to follow the Tepe murders. And
the one thing that she forgot to recap, they said, yeah, it's super fascinating that they use a relocation company. I had no idea. The one thing that she forgot to recap was the fact that they had evidence to put him at the scene.
For 8 years at Stone Creek Dental Care in Ashland, Julie Clark were greeted by Dr. Spencer Tepe.
Every time he walked in the office, he was always in a good mood and said good morning to everybody. He just had a happy presence about him all the time.
That presence and his signature laugh filled every room.
It was just loud, but it was awesome.
His impact reaching far beyond the office.
He just loved his patients. He really cared about his dentistry.
After working together nearly a decade,
you become more than just coworkers.
Closeness showing up in everyday moments, even the silly ones.
You couldn't embarrass him. I mean, there was a time when she was working with him over a patient and accidentally the water syringe squirted him in the forehead.
He had water dripping. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He just started laughing. He's like, oh my God.
Spencer and his beloved wife, Monique, were building a beautiful life. Julie and Michelle felt lucky to be a part of it.
And Dr. Tepe and Monique, they loved soccer. Both of them played. We actually went to a soccer game, watched the crew one time with Mo and Dr. Tepe, and just an awesome guy.
Spencer left the office last summer, yet their bond never did.
Just hard not being able to just text him. I mean, he texts us on our birthdays, on our birthday, happy birthday, on the holidays. You know, we kept in contact.
Until the very end.
Probably just like a couple days before even of the incident, he texted us a picture of his family. My comment back to him was just like, you guys look so happy.
Yeah.
Which makes this so hard.
Yesterday, you know, the services was amazing. It was beautiful. And that helped.
Some of his friends spoke. Some of Monique's friends spoke. Everybody's jam-packed into this room, and we were literally, elbow to elbow.
The loss is still sinking in, but they want the world to remember Spencer for who he truly was.
He had a unique way, it seemed, of making whoever he was with, like, feel very special. Really just was a genuinely nice person who just loved life.
Both Julie and Michelle told me Dr. Tepe truly loved his job and his patients. They say he listened, learned about their lives, and genuinely cared.
How sad is that? That is sad. Let's watch this one. Very sad.
Anfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious, and I am obsessed with the story in Columbus, Ohio, and I think you are too. This is just so mysterious. Even though we have an arrest, I have so many questions, and I'm also running through everything I've learned over decades of crime reporting as to what the police are doing right now to make their case against Dr. Michael McKee. You know by now, if you've been following all my podcasts, that this is Monique Tepe's ex-husband. Monique Tepe and her husband Spencer were violently murdered in their own home with their children just down the hall. And for 11 days, we had no idea who did it. And then suddenly her ex-husband is arrested. And by the way, I mean, blink and you miss it marriage, right? We all know this was a very quick marriage. It was a decade ago. This was a shock. And so we really decided to dig deep into Dr. Michael McKee's background. We all know that he is this like vascular surgeon, which means he's at the top of the heap. I mean, it takes about 15 years to become the vascular surgeon that he is, practicing where he was. And it just defies all logic for everybody, right? And I know you have a lot of questions about the crime scene. How did he get in? If it's him, all of that, I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But the big question I had today was, what's his background? Because we did a criminal background check on this guy and he's spotless. So I'm not surprised. You can't have a criminal background and be a surgeon. But spotless. I mean, nothing. So the mystery has been, well, the divorce papers just said that they weren't compatible. But how incompatible? Like, what's the story there? It's not in black and white, but the family is now opening the floodgates. They are telling a lot more secrets about what Monique was going through while she was married and then separated from Dr. Michael McKee. And it's starting to make a little bit more sense. I don't have the full picture, but I do have some, because Rob Misla, who is a brother-in-law of Monique and Spencer's, he is talking about stuff he would not say before. I interviewed him a week ago and I asked specifically, is there anybody who you can imagine would do this, would want this couple dead? And he said, nothing I can say, publicly, and the way he worded it seemed as though nobody at all. But when I go back and I really look into the wording, it's almost like I can't really say out loud some stuff I'm thinking. But he did not let on or indicate that there was anybody that stood out as a potential suspect. And that was by design, because the Tepe extended family and Monique's extended family, they did not want to jeopardize the investigation. So they agreed that they were going to keep quiet about a guy they had big suspicions about, a guy who now, since he's locked up, they're saying some things about that marriage. Then there's another red flag. No one at the wedding would have seen this. Nobody who watched the wedding video would have noticed. It wouldn't have stood out as, oh dear God, I sense a problem. But Monique and Spencer read wedding vows to each other, as many will do. And Monique's wedding vows were very, very curious in retrospect. She referenced waterfalls of tears in her past. And she referenced wrong relationships leading up to this joyous moment. But it wasn't so much even those words, it was her reaction when she read that. I'm going to show all that to you as well. I think it is so telling and heartbreaking when I look at it, because I almost could see PTSD now, knowing that the possibility exists that it is her ex-husband who murdered her, because he's allegedly the killer. And he's charged with the aggravated murders of both of them. I almost can see the PTSD as she's reading those vows to the man she loves, Spencer Tepe. And it is, you'll see it in a moment. I want you to say in the comments whether you agree with me. Tell me if I'm crazy. But I do want to hear your emotions about this, because I find it very emotional. So I also am going to break down something else in this episode, and it is the unbelievable amount of evidence that you can extract from a drive. And I don't mean a hard drive. I mean a road trip. If Michael McKee killed Spencer and Mo, and by the way, for those of you who have complained that I use the name Mo for Monique, that's how she refers to herself. That's how her family and friends refer to her. That was how she was commonly referred to, as Mo Tepe. So I'm not disrespecting her at all. I'm using the name that she actually used. But if Michael McKee killed Mo and her husband Spencer, that was a hell of a drive, like a hell of a long road trip. If he left from Rockford, Illinois, where he works, which I don't suspect, or if he left from Chicago, where he lives, 80 miles between those two places, it is upwards of 12 to 14 hours there and back to drive down to Columbus, Ohio. That's a long time to be on the road thinking, right? It's also a long time to be on highways that have gas stations with cameras and toll booths that register your toll tag if you've got one and take pictures of your car, and license plate readers that are everywhere, surveillance cameras that are everywhere, Google Maps that record your routes, maybe Waze even, because I use Waze all the time. Everybody has to take a bathroom break at some point and get gas, maybe even a little food in all that time. And you can't do that without stopping somewhere. And those somewheres all have cameras. Maybe you decided to use cash so that you wouldn't be tracked. Doesn't matter. You're on camera. Smile. If you pay anything anywhere, you're on camera at those gas stations. And so is your vehicle outside, right? Maybe you used your credit card. Make it even more easy. All those transactions, they get them so fast. Quick subpoenas by the police, and they can see your little financial popcorn trail. So there are a lot of ways that investigators could have tracked this very long route. And by the way, there's more routes than one to get from Chicago to Columbus or Rockford to Columbus. There are a lot of routes, like 3 that I highlighted. And routes avoided, that's also evidence. Routes you choose not to take. So Let's talk a little bit more now. I'm going to go way more into the drive in a minute with experts who know a lot more about this than I do. But let's talk a little bit about those red flags that may have been ignored, because juries need evidence, but they're not guaranteed a motive, right? Prosecutors do not have to prove motive to prove a case. And they will tell you that in openings and closings. But juries feel weird if they don't get it. And it's just the natural human tendency to ask, but why? That's motive, right? The number one question we have is like, why? Why would this happen? So without having to prove motive, juries want it, so prosecutors work to get some of that. And quite frankly, Monique Tepe's short first marriage to Dr. Michael McKee might just hold the clues. Sources were hinting that it was an acrimonious marriage. Things were bad, but now family is confirming it. He made threats on her life. I'm going to let the family members say that for themselves, and you're going to hear it. I'm going to let the family members say that for themselves, and you're going to hear it for yourself. But I spoke with Anjanette Levy on my podcast just last episode, and she got sources who said Mo wanted out of that marriage. He did not. So it was a one-way rejection. And that's why I tend to use the word jilted. You know, she was the one who filed for divorce. She was the one who bought the wedding ring and the engagement ring. That's in the documents. Her divorce documents say I paid for it, right? In the separation of property. So what we're really going to want to drill down on eventually is whether there was violence during this marriage, after this marriage. Was there stalking during the separation, after the marriage? Cyber stalking, actual stalking? There's a lot that, will help prosecutors get to motive if they can get evidence of that. And I don't think it's going to be tough given what you're going to hear a little bit later in this podcast, what the family members are saying about that.
I did a video this morning. Hey, Donna. I've been crazy today, so I haven't been able to respond to any emails. It's been a wild day. This morning's video I did was on the stalking. So we're going to look at that after this. I did a 45-minute live. We're going to get into whether he was stalked after this. But I have actually, before that, I have one more video I want to show you. We're going to play part of this. One more video, which is super interesting, a short one, and then whether he was stalked or whether he stalked them. Let's keep going.
Toxic relationship with Dr. McKee. I have a ton for you in this episode, and I do want you to comment along and let me know your thoughts on this case. I want to know your theories, because honest to God, you guys have given me theories before, and I have done full episodes on them. You have given me story ideas that I didn't know about, and I have done full episodes on that. So please jump in there and let me know when you don't like something I'm doing. Let me know when you do, and do tell me what your thoughts are on this particular case. There are a million theories, right? Why? How'd you get into the house? All of that. And I'm going to go over your top theories in the next episode. So yeah, you could be a part of this, and I really love it when you are. Let me start right at the beginning, because prisons and jails are full of people whose pathways absolutely seem destined from the moment they were born. Am I right? Their tragic childhoods prepared them for tragic lives. But then there's Michael McKee, accomplished and affluent, a vascular surgeon, highly trained, and now charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder for his ex-wife and her second husband, Spencer Tepe. As of this recording, and it is January 13th, it happened 2 weeks ago today, those murders. So in the world of true crime solving, this is pretty quick. Those cops did a great job, right? But I want to tell you something about Michael McKee's background. If you are the parent of a standout student who aces every test and collects gold stars by the pound, cover your ears, because that was Michael David McKee before he was Dr. McKee. He was originally of Zanesville, Ohio. Young Michael made the local paper, the Zanesville Times Recorder. That was way back when he was in first grade. And he won honorable mention in a poster contest that was sponsored by the state. So he got a really good start, off to the races. Then by age 13, he made the papers again because he wowed a state science fair and did a great project, made the papers. The year after that, it happened again. He made the front page because he won a spelling bee. So science and art and spelling. I mean, he ran the gamut of being a winner in all of those categories. And the winning word that Michael McKee spelled for the spelling bee that launched him onto the front page was siege. And Michael McKee said, quote, "I was a little nervous right up until the end," end quote. And the accolades just kept coming in high school. Dr. Michael McKee, as a high schooler, was 5th in his class, a National Merit Scholar, and a varsity football player. So safe to say prison was nowhere on the horizon for this guy. He was destined for great things. McKee studied medicine, I told you, at Ohio State University. And again, shocker, that's where he made the honor roll yet again. And you know who else went to Ohio State? McKee's future wife, Monique, and Mo's second husband, Spencer Tepe. And again, we do not know if these three ever converged. We don't know how Dr. McKee and Monique even met or hooked up or fell in love or where that happened. But we do know that in August of 2015, just 1 year after McKee got his medical license, Monique and McKee were married. So as I've reported before, they separated just 7 months later. They divorced 15 months later. Dr. McKee would go on to be licensed in California, in Maryland, in Virginia, in Nevada. And in 2024, he picked up another license, got licensed in Illinois. And he signed on with a hospital in where? Rockford, Illinois. You know, the place where they arrested him. I should be real clear here that since his arrest, we went in to check his profile at his workplace, and we discovered that his name has been scrubbed from the website, like he never even happened. There's no mention of Dr. McKee anywhere at his workplace in Rockford, Illinois. So I can only imagine. He worked at a child medical center. What it's been like for them, these coworkers. You know, we all hold doctors to a very high standard, right up there with judges, right? It's the reason judges sit higher than us in the courtroom. They're on a dais because they are higher than us in society. And so are doctors. They take a pledge. Do no harm, right? We trust doctors. When we see them on TV, we trust the products that they might be, endorsing. And so I'm sure that medical practice, that hospital where he was working, is devastated that this is a stain, on them. It's really hard to process that for them, I'm sure. So yeah, I can understand why they wiped him off the website right away. So with all that, what allegedly led a lifelong high achiever with the world at his feet to drive hundreds of miles and allegedly shoot 2 people in cold blood, shoot them dead? Well, for one thing, a family member of Monique and Spencer Tepe is now breaking his silence and opening the floodgates as to just how toxic Monique's marriage to Dr. Michael McKee really was. And I'm going to have his interview for you in just a moment. But first, huge thank you to you for being a part of this true crime community, especially as this story has broken. You have all come together. I have read your comments. I've appreciated everything you've said. Also want to thank my sponsors because they make this happen as well, like Just Thrive. I want to talk about something really important for just a quick second, your health and your well-being. If you're watching true crime, take care of yourself as well. And if your gut is off, everything can be off. Your digestion, your energy, your mood, even your focus. I had a long conversation with Gigi McKelvey. She's the host of the podcast Pretty Lies and Alibis. She has been digging and digging on this story from the very start. And we talked on my News Nation show. Here's a look at our conversation. All right. So Gigi, thanks for being on. First of all, your reaction as a true crime podcaster to the arrest of this vascular surgeon.
I tell you, I didn't have him on my radar as somebody who would possibly do this because the length of time that they were together versus the 8+ years they've been apart, I thought, well, a lot of times past, he's moved on. But, jealousy and rage is such a powerful emotion. And I think it trumps common sense or all of the straight A's or however many times you've been in the newspaper or the fact that you're a vascular surgeon. I think that over the past 8 years, it's going to be interesting to see his online activity. How often was he stalking them? Was he seeing her public profiles of a very happy marriage, then come the children and think that should have been me? That's all I got, Ashley. I can't think of any other reason why a man who easily could find a woman who wants to marry a vascular surgeon and live in a nice place like that, but seems like he never married again and makes me wonder, did he just never get over her?
And we have been digging for some kind of a presence for this guy, a dating profile, any girlfriends, any social media. And we're coming up pretty empty-handed. I'm wondering what you're finding.
Finding the same thing, which is nothing. He has even his medical pages, most of the times they'll have a photo of the doctor, none of him. I have found nothing online as far as social profiles. I've went to the Wayback Machine to look back for 10 years. And there's just nothing other than, the mention of, well, I got this in high school. Nobody cares about high school or how smart you were. You murdered an innocent couple with 2 small kids. It kind of all goes out the window. Clearly smart in the medical field, but not smart in the true crime world. He must not watch Banfield because he doesn't seem to understand you get caught.
And of course, innocent until proven guilty. So all of it allegations until a jury or he himself might plead guilty. That's we're getting over our skis there, though. But, you know, I interviewed a neighbor of his from that beautiful high rise. She said, building full of professionals. She knew him. She used to say hi to him all the time. They spoke at the barbecue on the roof and the pool area on the roof, said he was very nice. But apart from that, I'm not seeing anyone come out in support of Dr. McKee. No friends, no family, but for one person who said this was all very difficult. He was both friend and family, and he's since deleted that post.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I've noticed too. I've looked everywhere to see if anybody who knew him has come out and said, hey, we're shocked. You know, we had no idea other than the neighbor. Nothing. Everybody is very silent. You know, on the other hand, the Tepes, just wonderful things said about them. But, you know, people definitely can live these secret double lives behind closed doors. And I have a feeling, you know, allegedly that's what happened here is over time, he just got more and more upset and just a tragic case. But no, I have found nothing on this guy. It's almost like he doesn't exist online.
Now, what about the medical licenses? Because we haven't seen him practicing in California. We certainly see the practice. It's a children's group in Illinois. But, you know, he's got multiple states, medical licenses in multiple states. Do you read anything into that?
No, and that's really that's not uncommon with physicians. It is a long, lengthy process to get your license in any state. So when you get those licenses, you tend to keep them up. So, you know, if he did his residency in another state from where he went to school or his fellowship in another state, he would get those licenses and likely maintain them, or he could have got them just to have in his back pocket in case he got a wild hair one day and said, I want to move to California or I want to move to here or there. There's a lot of reasons. It's not really anything suspicious as far as that goes.
Gigi McKelvey, true, you know, you're just one of the best, and I've got you on speed dial. So thank you for this. Pretty Lies and Alibis host. Hope you'll be back.
Thanks, Ashley.
Back when police only had a quote unquote person of interest in the Tepe murders, before they had a suspect in custody, a relative of Monique and Spencer Tepe told us that he knew of nobody who might want this couple dead. In hindsight, though, there are good reasons that Spencer Tepe's brother-in-law might not want to have spooked Dr. Michael McKee by saying something on TV to me.
I was wondering the same thing. And I was wondering if him saying, oh, don't look at that video may not be anything, excuse me, was also to protect the integrity of the investigation as they were closing in on Michael McKee.
But with Monique's ex behind bars now, he can freely speak his mind, and he is doing just that. He told NBC News that there were red flags galore in Dr. McKee's relationship with Monique.
She was terrified because he had threatened her life on multiple occasions when they were married.
Rob Misla sharing with NBC News what he says Monique Tepe told him about her brief and troubled marriage to McKee. His account backed up by a second family member.
So she wasn't shy about talking to people about traumatic experiences that she had with her ex and just how emotionally abusive he was to her. It affected her to this day.
Do you know if the abuse was ever physical?
I don't. If any of us had known that these threats were actually grounded in possibility, we all would have acted differently.
Again, in hindsight.
Horrible. So sad.
The address that was given to us by the surgery group that he worked for turned out to be a fake address. It was an address that doesn't exist.
A search for a doctor now accused in connection with a high-profile double murder right here in Columbus. All of it months before police say he shot and killed his ex-wife and her new husband. It's exclusive information we're uncovering tonight. We're talking nearly a dozen failed attempts to serve surgeon Michael McKee with a malpractice lawsuit out of Nevada. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight at 6. I'm Rodney Dunnigan.
And I'm Isabel Hinson. The attorney who filed that lawsuit says recent attempts led to fake addresses, questionable state-issued phone numbers.
So, yeah, we covered here that there was alleged lawsuits. He was named in a lawsuit. We covered it. Now they're coming out to show it was true. And not only did we just hear from Gigi and Ashley that he was scarce in social media, you're going to be surprised to hear they couldn't find him when they were filing the lawsuits. And yeah, Sad for his family. And yeah, now they can speak about it, but they couldn't locate him, which is crazy.
And claims that Dr. McKee had just disappeared. Investigator Lisa Rontola joins us live in studio to break down her findings. Lisa?
Well, months before, police say vascular surgeon Michael McKee killed his ex-wife and her new husband in their Wineland Park home. He was added to a malpractice lawsuit out of Nevada. The lawyer who filed that suit says the normal process to serve Dr. McKee with that suit became very abnormal. In this exclusive interview, Las Vegas lawyer Dan Laird tells me Dr. McKee seemed to have vanished.
Months before walking into a Chicago area courtroom this week, arrested for the Columbus murders of his ex-wife and her new husband.
How serious can these cases be?
They can be very serious.
Vascular surgeon Michael McKee was added to a malpractice lawsuit out of Las Vegas, which claims he failed to train a physician's assistant who injured a patient at Las Vegas Surgical Associates LLP in 2023. Las Vegas lawyer Dan Laird filed the case.
Some physicians who are sued for the first time take it very personally and heavily, and it can be devastating.
But Laird can't say how Dr. McKee responded. Since September of last year, McKee was unable to be found.
Dr. McKee almost really became a phantom, a ghost, if you will.
That's what it seemed like.
In this declaration of due diligence filed with Nevada's Clark County District Court, Laird's process server lists at least 9 times of trying to track down Dr. McKee. He said McKee's address provided by the medical group doesn't exist.
There is no...
What? The address provided by the medical group doesn't exist. Wild.
Such street, there is no such address.
McKee's phone number listed with the Nevada Medical Board led to a fax tone from a fax machine. In October, Laird's team reached out to the other surgeons listed in the case, McKee's former colleagues, for the vascular surgeon's current contact.
What did Dr. Caravella say?
He said he has no idea where Dr. Michael McKee is now, said he just disappeared.
Don't they leave some sort of contact?
So they tend to be highly responsible people. They're not the kind of people who just disappear suddenly. And this was very surprising to us.
With more dead ends on social media like Facebook and LinkedIn, Laird tracked McKee to Rockford, Illinois in November. Repeated phone calls were not answered or returned. He did not know McKee's ex-wife Monique Tepe and her new husband Spencer were shot and killed in their Columbus home in December. And McKee was charged in both murders this month. I told him that this week.
Shocking. If you listed out the people who would likely be to be accused of committing a double homicide, a fully trained vascular surgeon would be at the bottom of my list.
A judge granted the declaration of due diligence in the malpractice case in October. That means McKee can now be served in the malpractice lawsuit with a notice filed in the newspaper. This is only the second time in 12 years. Lawyer Dan Laird tells me he's had to do this. I did try to call the medical group where Dr. McKee worked in Nevada. No one called me back.
Wow. So the medical office didn't even call her back. Absolutely wild. Here's what I put together this morning. We're going to watch that, and then we're going to keep going. We're going to be asking the really hard question. Did Michael McKee actually stalk Monique Tepe, or has the story around him been twisted? Then I promise what we're going to get to is we're going to walk through what the family is now saying about the threats that Michael made against Monique. Stay tuned. Welcome into Motive.Means.Opportunity True Crime.
A forensic criminologist who's been writing about this very case. Laura, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate this. Look, I spoke with the Tepe's brother-in-law a week ago, and it seemed as though there was no one on the radar for the family members as to who could have done something this awful. But now he's saying that there were these red flags, that Dr. McKee had threatened Monique Tepe's life when she was Monique McKee. And I just wonder, how red a flag is it when someone makes a death threat to the person they're married to?
Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so absolutely, the death threats in an intimate partner relationship are basically a huge warning sign, and it's always best to view them in context of it's shifting, like the conflict between them is shifting between emotional conflict to potentially a behavioral conflict where maybe an abuser is going to then move from just thinking about hurting the victim to actually acting, and that becomes lethal for a domestic violence homicide victim.
So the brother-in-law has stated that Michael McKee, Monique's ex-husband, threatened to kill her when they were together. Keep listening.
I mean, I suspect if there's going to be a trial, I mean, that's, you know, obviously there can always be a plea bargain, as we saw in Koberger, but if there's going to be a trial, I sense that a lot of this stuff is going to come out in court, the things that were said, the things that were threatened, etc. And they matter to juries. But I was really taken by that wedding video, not just the words when she said wrong relationships and waterfalls of tears led me to you, Spencer, but she started to cry and continued to cry all the way through that. And I just wanted to get your professional assessment of that.
Yes, that struck me as well. And it struck me that the words that she chose, she said, bad bumble dates, wrong relationships. And she put the S on the end of it, Ashley. And I thought that was interesting where she said a wrong relationships. But, did she mean a wrong relationship? And that's one of the things I've been thinking about recently. In addition to that, then she said the last part of it was about the waterfall of tears. And so for me, it kind of, the summarizing statement that kind of went through my mind was that she went on a journey and there was a tremendous amount of emotional growth through trial and error. And that resulted in meaning to her because she was saying, this wasn't worthless. This wasn't, my journey mattered because it led me all the way to you. And it really struck me that she was so emotional and she was so grateful to be there with Spencer that day. That's how I perceived it.
This is truly such a sad, sad case. These Tepe, this family, the Tepes, were truly madly in love, and you could tell. And this seemed to really infuriate Michael McKee. Just our condolences to the family. It's just the saddest, saddest situation. Let's keep watching.
One of the things that you wrote about the Tepe murders, Dr. Petler, is, quote, murder is conflict resolution for the offender. And I just want you to pull on that thread a bit.
Sure. That is something I've been talking about for a very, very long time throughout my career, simply because this is the type of situation that I specialize in. So in domestic violence homicide, and the reason I'm using that analogy and those words is because the defendant in this case is the former intimate partner of Monique Tepe. And so it's possible that, of course, there's going to be a trial, but what they're saying is that they're alleging this person is responsible for their deaths, Monique and Spencer. And what I mean by conflict resolution is that murder is conflict resolution in that it resolves an internal conflict that's going on inside the offender. And this is just a blanket statement across the board for intimate partner homicide. And it doesn't make sense, but to us, maybe, but it makes sense to that person, the offender, him or herself. And so sometimes it can be years like this. And in these cases, there is stalking. And of course, all of these other lethality factors that go in that we're looking at those variables when we have a situation like this. And as this case evolves, I think all of that will come to fruition for everyone so that they can see kind of what happened. But sometimes these types of cases, offenders keep things close to the vest and they never reveal why they might have done something to injure or kill victims, because that's how they maintain control and that's how they continue to relive that emotional, cathartic execution over and over and over again.
Thank you for.
Let's just keep digging deeper. Stick around. We're going to give credit where credit is due to the family friend, the family member, Rob Miller, who did the video recording on their wedding day, January 30th, 2021, in their home, Monique and Spencer Tepe in Columbus, Ohio. Watch the ceremony. Listen to the words we just heard that she said during the ceremony. Please say some prayers while we watch this video. Let's keep going.
And the families out there, thank you. The brooms and the bride, they want to say thank you very much for the attendance, and thank you for your contributions and happy thoughts. You know, I'm going to start out with the little story. You know, I was kind of taken back, you know, when Monique approached me a couple weeks back and said, "Hey, Dad, I want you to do the ceremony for me." And she told me, "Hey, I think I found a guy that's just as good as you." I said, "Whoa." In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute. We got to put this to the test. So, yeah, I did my research,
Now listen to her vows.
Special. I had quite a journey to get to you. Countless bad bumble dates, wrong relationships, and waterfalls of tears. But it was worth every cringing second because it led me to you. Throughout all of this, I knew that God was guiding me to my person, and that when I met him, it would be the most magical thing ever. And boy, is that an understatement. I finally found my lobster, and it honestly couldn't be a person with a more beautiful heart.
Truly sad. She says she had cringe-worthy experiences in order to meet Spencer Tepe. Stay tuned as we continue. Did Michael McKee really stalk Monique Tepe?
Divorce about Monique and Dr. McKee's divorce back in 2017. So it's been about 8 years since they were divorced. And I've seen a lot of things online that I want to clear up, some misconceptions that people have about things that they've seen in the divorce filing, some misconceptions about, there's some new things that popped up in the filing from last year that may not be exactly what they appear. So I'm going to get into that with a divorce attorney in this episode and really go through everything that we can see about their divorce and what it might mean, especially when you look at the big picture of Dr. McKee now being charged with murdering his ex-wife Monique and her new husband Spencer. Also, we know that Dr. McKee is now being extradited. He had his initial court hearing in Illinois, since that is where he was arrested. He's not fighting extradition, and he is being sent back to Ohio to face these murder charges. And once he gets back to Ohio, we expect to learn more about what exactly police have on him. I mean, in the arrest affidavit, it was pretty basic in terms of them saying that a car connected to him was at the scene and also surveillance video, but there's surely more evidence they have now, especially since we now know that they upgraded the charges. Initially, they were just murder charges. They're now aggravated murder charges. So I'm going to get into that, but especially I'm going to dig into the divorce records in the case and what they could mean and really go through them in a very, very detailed way in this episode of Ryan Intimate Investigates. There's actually one other thing I wanted to tell you guys about before I get to my interview. If you're wondering, I'm in the airport, by the way, because I'm traveling to Utah to work on a story about the Charlie Kirk murder, which I'll have more on later. You guys know I've been following that one. But there are some other developments with the Monique and Spencer Tepe murders. Spencer's brother-in-law has now told NBC News that their family quickly believed that Dr. McKee was somehow involved in their deaths. And that he was, quote, this is what he said, quote, "He was an emotionally abusive person when they were together. That is all I know." So that's...
Okay, we're going to go through that. We'll come back to Brian Enton. I want to bring you that story now. Let's just go through that together. Family member shares details about Monique Tepe's former marriage to suspect. Let's watch because
Tonight, Spencer and Monique Tepe's brother-in-law tells NBC News when the family first learned the couple had been murdered, only one possible suspect came to mind, Monique's ex-husband, Michael McKee.
She was terrified because he had threatened her life on multiple occasions when they were married.
Rob Misla sharing with NBC News what he says Monique Tepe told him about her brief and troubled marriage to McKee. His account backed up by a second family member.
So she wasn't shy about talking to people about traumatic experiences that she had with her ex and just how emotionally abusive he was to her. It affected her to this day.
The vascular surgeon is now charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder. Officials allege he shot and killed the Tepes in their Columbus, Ohio home. Misla said
it affected her to this day. Wild. Absolutely wild.
As Monique and McKee abruptly divorced in 2017 after less than 2 years of marriage because Monique was so worried. Court documents cite incompatibility. Misla says he's unaware of whether he had made any recent threats.
Do you know if the abuse was ever physical?
I don't.
A public defender representing McKee says he intends to plead not guilty.
If any of us had known that these threats were actually grounded in possibility, we all would have acted differently.
Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Rockford, Illinois.
That is so sad to hear. If any of us had known that these threats were going on, we would have acted differently. That is so sad. Let's keep watching Brian Enton's deep dive.
Something new on the record from the brother-in-law. We had heard from an unnamed source in the family that they thought that it was Monique's ex, Dr. McKee, but now he's saying this on the record, according to NBC News, quote, he was an emotionally abusive person when they were together. That is all I know. Also, according to Fox, there was a downward spiral that was happening with Dr. McKee after I had actually found out that he was working in Nevada for a while. He was working in Nevada and also in California at one point, which some people that I was talking to were saying that was a little strange for his career path to be moving around so much. Fox News is reporting that there was a downward spiral that had to do with his job performance, basically saying that he had issues when he was working in Nevada. Let me find this. This person told Fox Digital that he basically had no experience working as a vascular surgeon when he was in Nevada, and that he was in a downward spiral that began after a series of alleged surgical mishaps, one of which was detailed in a lawsuit, which I had heard about in Nevada. This person told Fox, and they're not named, he was always nice. He was always kind, and he wasn't one of those that has these like emotional outbursts or anything like that within the operating room or when he gets into a stressful situation, but that it was reckless for those around McKee to continue allowing him to perform high-risk surgeries knowing his limitations. Why are you letting a guy that's a year and a half out of fellowship, 2 years, free reign to do these crazy cases? How come there's nobody putting a stop saying, what are you thinking of doing? The source told Fox Digital. So apparently when he was in Nevada, working in Nevada as a surgeon, there were definitely some bumps in the road. Okay, so I'm joined now by Ashley Frankel, who, full disclosure, is one of my best friends, and we've been best friends since middle school, really, right, Ashley?
Middle school.
Yeah, middle school. But she's also an amazing divorce attorney based in Miami. So she's the perfect person for me to talk to about the divorce of Michael McKee and Monique Tepe. And there's been, as you know, Ashley, there's been like a ton of rumors out there and speculation about a lot of things. So I wanted to just go through the divorce docket with you. And of course, we don't have all the supplemental materials. All of that is kind of locked out from public view, but there are some things that we can learn from looking at the docket and maybe clear up some of the rumors and misconceptions. So first of all, thank you, Ashley, for doing this with me.
Of course.
I appreciate it. I want to start, and we're going to work our way to the beginning of the divorce, and it looks like it was finalized in 2017. But one thing a lot of people actually are picking up on is that in the record, there are some lines, it looked like something new happened in June of last year. It says original copy of hearing notice, that there was a continuance. So it goes from no activity, 2017, 2018, and then there's nothing. And then there's these lines that pop up in 2025, which a lot of people are thinking, gosh, did something happen to cause this? Was she complaining about something? Was there some kind of abuse happening? What do you think those lines are?
So full disclosure, I'm not licensed in Ohio. Every state has different laws. There's a lot of similarities between jurisdictions, but when I opened the docket, the first thing I saw was that the status of the case was closed. And typically, if there was post-judgment activity going on, it would say something like reopened to reflect that, there was some sort of filing, either a petition or a motion. And that happens when someone, doesn't comply with an agreement, doesn't do what they were required to do. When I first heard that, I thought it was unusual given the short duration of the marriage, the fact that they've been divorced for a long time. They don't share kids. As far as I know, they don't share custody of pets. And so I really thought it was odd that there would have been any post-judgment litigation unless there was some sort of obligation in their settlement agreement that he or she had violated. So when I looked at the docket, I saw the first entry in 2025 just said continuance. And that was odd because I would expect to see before that, like I said, some sort of a filing before just noting like a continuance, which is essentially, a delay of an event, of a hearing or a trial or whatever. And then the entries after that, let's see, they say original copy of hearing notice filed and then strike schedule date. So what I believe could have been the case is that this was simply a clerical error and that it was misdocketed like from another case.
Okay, this woman is Brian Enton's great friend. We all know and love and trust Brian Enton. Do you think this was simply a clerical error? And this case is one error after another, with the police officer going to the wrong house, the 911 operator just being so lackadaisy when the calls first came in, and now a clerical error in their file? Or do you think, as we continue to listen here, as she says, the other possibility is, and the really only other possibility would have been if Monique was being stalked by Michael McKee, but she also mentions why this is not the best route for Monique to have gone if that was the case. So let me know what you think after this next clip. Do you think Michael McKee was stalking Monique and Spencer Tepe? And after this clip, we have another interesting short clip to show you that might help you decide that statement, decide the answer to that question, rather. Keep listening.
And that happens sometimes, right? Because when you have people manually inputting information, if they get one number of the case number wrong, it could result in, this appearing on the wrong docket. That's what I think happened, but I don't know for sure.
What would, likely a mistake, because why would this just pop up, 8 years later? But do these things would they ever reopen a case like you said, it also says closed, which goes even more to your point that it is still closed. But what would come up where something legit would reopen a file like this, like 8 years later? Does that ever happen?
I wouldn't see that often. Usually, post-judgment litigation has to do with like if you have a support obligation, which I don't believe there was any here, given that they don't share kids and it was a short, duration of the marriage, or if like one of them was supposed to transfer property to the other and failed to do that, or which would have probably been the most likely scenario here. Like if they, a lot of people have been talking about this mutual restraining order. And I think they are reading more into that than what it is because of the word restraining order. Here in Florida, that would mean like you can't be within, a certain amount of feet of someone. But in Ohio, I've just learned from, watching TV and listening, to other people talk about this case that that's just like an automatic thing, and it prevents both of them from like harassing each other, meddling into each other's business. And neither of them have to ask for that. It's just automatic. But that would have been the only scenario that I could see post-judgment litigation arising here if one of them had somehow violated that restraining order. And for instance, if he was like harassing her or, vice versa, then I could see possibly something happening. But even then, I don't think she would have filed something in the divorce case in Ohio. I think she would have gone down to the police station or the courthouse and gotten an actual restraining order, which would include like stalking, harassment. Even if it's like text messages or on social media, you would still go get an actual restraining order.
That makes complete sense to me. That if they were being stalked, that she would call and get a restraining order versus going back to the court. What do you think? I mean, it's really hard to say here. Really hard to say, especially with the little video clip of possible thought processes that one creator put into after this. Stay tuned. Keep watching.
So the restraining order listed in the divorce case is just standard in Ohio, it seems.
It's just
It's not a
standard
real
in-
restraining order, like you can't come within 10 feet
Correct.
of me.
Correct.
Okay. So going back to the beginning of the record from when this all started back in 2017, what stands out to you? I mean, does it seem like a fairly basic divorce?
It seems like the most basic divorce. There was no, as far as I can see, there was no motion practice. You know, even though that I heard that they were together for several years before getting married, they were only, as you know, they were married for less than a year. Basically, after she filed, because she was the petitioner, the case was closed within 2 months. So I assumed during that time, you know, maybe they were making some financial disclosures to each other and agreeing on a property settlement agreement. They could have been working with a mediator during that time or some sort of a neutral third party, but there's really nothing that sticks out to me. I believe that he did not have a lawyer, and I think that she did have a lawyer. So her lawyer would have been dealing with him, and, you know, I don't know how much property they could have accumulated during the short duration of the marriage, but that really would have been the only thing that they could have been doing, other than, you know, complying with like requisite paperwork that the court requires in order for them to get divorced.
Something else I saw on Twitter, Ashley, is some people are picking up on this line where it says domestic violence shelter. And some people are like, oh my gosh, look, that shows there was domestic violence. But it seems like almost like just a fee that maybe anyone getting divorced has to pay. Is that right?
That's what it looks like to me, just because it seems like a fee, and the docket is reflecting like the allocation of where that fee goes. You know, domestic violence shelter, child abuse, like that, they didn't have children, court computerization, you know, legal aid. This seems like they're just, for whatever reason, because we don't do that here, they're allocating where the payment is going. Like in you know, Miami, it's around $400 to file for divorce for the court to process the paperwork. I have no idea where that money goes, you know.
Yeah, maybe something like this.
I think that's what this could be, but I don't think it has any, I don't think this means that, you know, Monique was in a domestic violence shelter or anything like that.
We've heard that they use what's being called like a private judge. What does that mean? And is that common for couples to use?
So typically, private judges are used when you have two very high profile people who, you know, want to keep their business out of the media. You see it a lot with celebrities, you know, in Los Angeles, actors, actresses. I think Brad and Angelina had a private judge. You know, we've had it. I've used private judges because it can be, it's, first of all, a private judge you have to pay. So it's like paying another lawyer. And, you know,
this just begs the question, why did they use a private judge? Such an interesting case. And it just, if we believe what this woman is saying, which seems logical, that these were clerical errors, what are the odds that this case is just a comedy of, not funny, comical at all, but a comedy of errors with the 911 operator, the police going to the wrong address, a potential clerical error in the file? I mean, it's just wild to think of. I'm also wondering if, I'm curious, to those that are coming in, welcome in. I usually do a live earlier in the day. We're late today because I had things going on. So I'm replaying what I recorded this morning. But they said they served him the papers for the lawsuit and they couldn't locate him in September. And that was also the court entry date for their divorce. That, remember, the new information was added first in June, but there was a September court appearance. Excuse me. So I'm curious, and I'm wondering if the lawsuit, the 7 times they recorded, I think he said that they weren't able to reach Michael McKee in the lawsuit because, as per their divorce, Monique and McKee, Monique Tepe and McKee, who's arrested, they had to notify each other, from what I understand, if either of them moved. So now the lawsuit is looking to reach him in September, and they have 7 recordings, which we just showed you, of their inability to reach him. And I'm wondering if that is what that addition to their divorce statement is, like, we don't know where the guy is. We don't know where the guy is. You following me? Like, I'm curious now if we're going to learn that that was what the addition was. Yeah. And this private judge, he had no money or chose to not find his own attorney to represent himself in the divorce because it looks like it wasn't contested. But then they hired a private judge. There's more to this. I'm sure that will trickle out over time. But yeah, it's interesting. I got the wrong one here. How did I get the wrong one up? Yeah, let's keep going. I don't know how that happened, but anyway. Okay, let's keep watching. We're almost done this one. We're going to get to another brief clip. So you can answer the question today, whether or not you think Michael McKee rather, was stalking Monique and Spencer Tepe.
Another advantage of it is that if you have many issues in dispute and a large marital estate, you get quicker hearings. It sort of expedites the process. The court system here in Miami is so backed up that sometimes, I file a motion and for my client, it's an emergency. And then I have to go back and tell them I can't get you a hearing for 6 months. And so a private judge, they're not bogged down with all the cases, and so they can really devote more time and attention to your matter, and it can expedite things and also keep things out of the public eye. This would not be a case that I would ever think would have a private judge. That could have a different meaning in Ohio, for instance, like because it was a shorter duration of marriage, and I don't believe that they accumulated significant marital property during their marriage. Maybe it's equivalent to like a mediator to help them resolve things. I really don't know. Or maybe it's like an alternate judge. Sometimes the judge sitting in the division has too much on their caseload, so they'll refer certain matters, usually post-judgment, but sometimes child-related matters, they'll refer to a magistrate who's like a junior judge, so to say. And sometimes retired judges will, in some divisions, be available to help, adjudicate these like smaller things that might come up. I really don't know, but private judge is sort of odd, in my opinion, in this situation, just because they don't seem like two people who would need a private judge.
It seems like such a clean and basic divorce based on the record, even though we can't read all the supplements. I'm just curious, with clients that you've had, could there have been a lot of drama behind the scenes? Could there have been abuse, and that's just not reflected in the divorce paperwork?
100%. So, Florida is a no-fault state, and unless if, for instance, a common example is like infidelity, and people think, if someone cheats on someone, there's going to be some sort of a penalty in a divorce. Infidelity doesn't matter in a divorce unless marital funds were expended in connection with that affair. So if you went on took your girlfriend or boyfriend on a big trip or bought expensive gifts, then it would factor into it. However,
what is going on?
I've had short-term marriages where a lot of drama has occurred and it has a hefty docket, but a lot of times when people are married for a short period of time, something happens and they realize that they don't want to be in this marriage anymore and they just want to get out as quickly as possible. And so they're not looking to, spend money on legal fees. It's more like personal, emotional, and things that really don't factor into a divorce, right? Like really in this case, it should just be about the distribution of property, like separating any marital assets from non-marital assets. If they owned a house together or an apartment, who's going to stay in the house? Are they going to sell it? Is one person going to buy the other out? Stuff like that. Of course, there could be behind the scenes a lot of emotional things, but you wouldn't really in a marriage like this where there's no children and it's a short-term marriage, to the extent there was like emotional or physical abuse, you wouldn't really detail that in any of the paperwork that was filed. So there could be a lot of stuff that happened that led up to this divorce, but there would just be no real reason to detail it.
No real reason to detail it in the paperwork. What do you think? Is this interesting that Michael McKee chose to represent himself to save money from an attorney, which apparently didn't have a lot of. He had student debt, and we've already covered here, Monique bought her own rings, but they would pay for a private judge. It just seems a little interesting. What are your thoughts on that below? As we finish up here and move on to the next little clip to help you answer the question
Divorce filing.
And also, we don't know
on whether or not Michael McKee stalked Monique and Spencer Tepe.
if he was abusive to her, obviously, but if he was and she just wanted to get out, with people you represent, with women you represent, if they just want to get out,
Yes.
is it sometimes easier to just make a clean break, keep the divorce
Yes.
simple? Could that have been what happened here?
100%. And I suspect that it was like, you know, she, from by all accounts, was like, you know, I think she used, I know she wasn't working after she had kids, but she used to work. She, I think, did well for herself. She wasn't relying on him for financial support. I think he was a resident and not making much money at the time that they were married. So 100%. And, you know, it takes two to accomplish that. So you have, clients always tell me like, this should be quick, this should be easy. Like, how long do you think this can take? And I'm always like, I can't make that prediction because it ultimately depends on who you're married to and who they hire. That's going to impact the outcome of your case. But like in this case, he didn't have a lawyer. He didn't feel the need to get one. And it was done in 2 months. And so it really just feels like they came to an agreement on everything. And they were both, you know, they were both trying to achieve the same goal, it seems, to get it over with as soon as possible.
Done in 2 months. Well, we heard differently. We heard 2 years. So I'm not really clear on whether or not it was 2 months or 2 years. But let's watch something else to give you pause. Did Michael McKee really stalk Monique Tepe? Okay, we're going to watch a short clip from Truth and Transparency and what she discovered about a possible location Michael McKee could have rented an Airbnb. And then we're going to go listen to a criminal behavior analyst on whether or not the Tepes were stalked by Michael McKee. Let's watch.
Dry run of the crime. So assuming that he drove, and he is the man, he drove from Rockford to Columbus, commits the crime, and comes back. You're looking at, if you just take the time alone that it would take and you don't get out of the vehicle, which is impossible, but we're going to go ahead and say 6 hours and 48 minutes, times that by 2. Okay. For easy math here, we're just going to go ahead and say 12 and a half hours. But again, that is not getting out of a vehicle. And you're going to have to get out of a vehicle if you want to fill it up with gas. You could pack, even if you put your gas in 2 gas cans, put them in your car, put them in your trunk, regardless. And then you could pack with your water bottles and your snacks, all great. But you're still going to have to stop. Then to commit the crime, okay? Wherever it is that you're going to need to park, and they're going to be walking, same thing, walking back to where you parked. And so if you're just going to do this, it's going to take you at least, again, just driving time, 13 hours, not including anything else. And that's me stopping to get out of my vehicle on the side of the road and put gas in it. That's not stopping to use the bathroom. That's not stopping to get food or anything like that. Now, if you're going to commit this crime and know where they live, how you're going to get in, planning and plotting it all out, I think it would behoove the Columbus Police Department to look into, and I'm just going to show something here for tracking purposes here. So back in the day here, Franklin County, Columbus Police Division, the Columbus Police Division, the Columbus Division of Police received a state grant for automated license plate reader technology in 2024. The agency signed a 5-year contract in 2022 with Axon that includes more than 2,000 body-worn cameras and 460 in-car camera systems with automated license plate recognition. Again, that started in 2022. Next. Okay. It is now a fact. It is now a fact that one of these cameras that was down there on the corner of 8th and 4th, right where their house is, see where it says 1407 there? The house that's next to it is 1411. That's their house. On that pole that's mounted, one of those cameras right there is a flock camera. We're going to go into more of that in the next episode, but wanted to have it up so I can point out to you guys. We're going to go into more of that. Now, let's see, we're going to pull up Airbnbs. Here we go. And would you believe this? Okay. Okay. If you look at picture 5 right here, all the way to the right-hand corner up and to the right, you will see that this Airbnb that is directly across the street, catty corner, you can see the Tepe's home. It is the second house right there on the corner. This is an Airbnb that's, again, it's across the street, just down, like you could see where the dot is. And then if you look up there in the corner, zoom in, that's their home. I was looking to see, because of Ohio State and we have sporting events all the time, a lot of people bought.
Right here. So you can see the Airbnb with the red icon here on top. And if you look to the right on the screen, across the street on the opposite corner is the Tepe's home. Right there. Right here. Literally. This was an Airbnb. Let's keep watching for a few more minutes and you tell me whether you think that he could have been there across the street and rented that Airbnb. We know he drove, excuse me, a long distance to get there from Illinois. What do you think? Let's watch for another couple minutes, and then we have an expert talking about this.
Places down around these areas, and then would Airbnb them, okay? And they would redo, they gutted them, they redid them, and they're beautiful. Like this one right here goes for $239 a night, okay? So I wanted to see how many were in the area of the home. And so when I did this, I said, no freaking way. This one, again, this is a different angle of the street. But it is one of the duplexes that's literally across the street, and just you can see the complexes and that just it's literally you could throw a snowball and make it almost at the house, because even everything's like closer down there. But that's fourth right there, and that's another look at the house that you'd be Airbnb-ing. There you go. Look at this. It's facing their home, and it's literally right across the street. See how this one's all fixed up? Looks nice. And in the back, you could park back here in the back of the house. And let's go into the living area of the kitchen. So like, see, like they redid everything. I mean, this place looks fabulous. But anyways, $239 per night. Again, because you're so close to the campus, you're so close to the bar. I mean, High Street. But hot damn to rent this out for $239 a night. Anyways, I was just looking at the area, and this is literally you can see and watch everything happening from their house.
Do you think he was there across the street? Do you think he was there across the street? I don't know. It's a fetch. It's a definite fetch, stretch. But it could be. It could be. Listen up now for our last video on this dive on Dr. Michael McKee, and whether he stalked. And let me know whether you think he was stalking Monique and Spencer Tepe. Listen up.
Richards, former investigator at New Scotland Yard and host of the podcast's Crime Analyst and Real Crime Profile. Laura, thank you so much for being on. It's great to talk to you. You have this expression that I am fascinated to talk about. You say stalking is murder in slow motion. Take it from there.
Yes, well, thank you for having me on. And I use the term murder in slow motion because I've reviewed and worked so many different cases where there's a drip, drip, drip before the murder. And I mean a drip, drip, drip of controlling and abusive behavior. And then we have the homicide event. And often people don't see the psychological and the emotional. People look for physical abuse. But what I often see is that coercive control and stalking, they're the biggest indicators of a murder in slow motion and escalation when a rejected or vengeful ex-partner wants to take revenge on a former partner. So we can see this behavior within the relationship too, and sometimes we call it stalking and coercive control within the relationship, but the post-separation abuse, that's when it tends to escalate.
Okay, that's where I want to jump in. And I keep referring to this case as he's innocent until proven guilty. He's only just been brought before a judge for a 1-minute appearance. There's so much more still ahead in this case. But you've said that the separation step is the most dangerous time for domestic violence. Tell me about your experiences.
Yeah, so what we see is that 76% of women who are murdered by a former partner, they're murdered at the point of separation. So we know that it's a high risk factor. And we also know with jealous and controlling behavior, that's the biggest indicator towards a femicide. And so people look for physical violence, but actually it's the coercive control and the jealous behavior that is a far greater marker. And at the point of separation, this notion of if I can't have you, no one can.
At the point of separation, and now we're talking 8 years after the divorce is finalized. Wow. So typically this would be at the point of separation. Let's keep listening.
That's the tipping point where a man, and it's often a man, it's when women leave men, and they can bide their time too. We do see a lot of the murders happen within the first month and the first 6 months, but I've also seen cases where it looks like a hiatus of even 8 years, but actually there's been a lot of behavior going on within that period of time.
Well, that's fascinating to me because so far we've uncovered no evidence of physical stalking or cyber stalking, but I just can bet your bottom dollar that that's exactly what detectives are finding out now, having probably seized all forms of electronics in his apartment, his place of work, even a girlfriend or a friend he may have had where he had access to electronics. And so, and of course, the Tepe's electronics will have been there as well, unless they were stolen as the killer left the home. But I do want to say, like, the family says, yes, he was emotionally abusive. Yes, he made death threats, but there was no known physical abuse. So I'm just so curious about your take on something that, you know, could fester for a decade, that never was physically abusive, but that could, if he's guilty, yield such incredible violence.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. All of my research and analysis and what we know with domestic abuse, there's a term called coercive control. And it's actually the coercive and controlling behavior, the emotional abuse, the psychological abuse that underpins it. They're the tactics that are used. They're the far more significant indicators of an escalation to femicide. And that's why we mustn't just look for physical abuse. That is not the most significant indicator that something may well escalate. So we have to change what we look for. And equally, you know, when we think about they were together for 8 months and then she separated and she filed for divorce, Monique did, in 2017, but they were only together for 8 months, a very short marriage. So I want to know what was going on in that marriage, and equally what happened to trigger her to move out. The filing said that they were incompatible, but something for me, there's something much more significant there going on. But like I said, the coercive and controlling behavior, we know that he's a surgeon. I've had many cases where someone is a surgeon, a doctor, a pilot, where they are very controlling personalities, control freaks. That's the biggest indicator of harm to women.
Thank you for
control freaks. And she also said that we have to change the way we look at these things. That just because we didn't see or have proof or evidence of abuse at the time Monique left Dr. Michael McKee doesn't mean it didn't exist. So thank you for
surgeon from Illinois will be extradited to Ohio for murdering Spencer and Monique Tepe while they slept. And it's Monique's ex-husband. So now that the who seems to be answered, there are so many whys. I did some digging for you. Listen to what Monique says in her wedding vows to Spencer Tepe.
Spencer, what can I say? From day one, I knew you were something special. I had quite a journey to get to you. Countless bad bumble dates, wrong relationships, and waterfalls of tears. But it was worth every cringing second because it led me to you.
Was she talking about Michael? Do you think he watched it? She doesn't name him, but you can hear the pain still in her voice. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe so we can follow this case all the way to justice. They've been divorced for almost 9 years. Monique filed because she said they were incompatible. They did not have kids together, and there was no spousal support. That's what I found in their divorce records. I'm Anna Emerson, an investigative reporter with more than 30 years of experience. I took McKee's address on the affidavit of probable cause, which was Chicago, and found that's a 5.5-hour drive to the Tepe's address in Columbus, Ohio. That's a long time to think, plan, review, go over and over in your head. And at any time, you could just choose to turn around. The car was found in Rockford, Illinois, which is an even longer drive. Police haven't released a motive. All we know is what's in that affidavit. That surveillance video places McKee at the Tepe's home before and after the murders.
When you find that conflict embedded in that love and belonging, that's where you find the reason someone's dead.
That was forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Petler. She nailed it with her murder room method specific to victimology. We spoke to her last week about the investigation so far, and you guys loved her approach. Now that we have an arrest, we wanted to bring her back again. The whole country has been waiting to see how this investigation was going to turn out.
I love this woman. Keep listening. She's incredible.
What were your initial thoughts when you heard there was an arrest?
This is a horrific case because it's everyone's worst nightmare to be attacked in their home in the middle of the night and brutally murdered. I have so much going on in my brain about this case. Like, we could probably go on for days and days and days.
Yeah, it's a big one, right? This is a very important case because it explains, I feel like, so much of the work that you do, Laura.
So thank you, Ann. Yes, and it's going to take me quite a while and quite a few true crime and equines live, my little live
Right.
horses. It's going to take me quite a few weeks to get through all of this with people so that I can answer questions and help people understand. And let me say this first. The number one thing I think that is critically important to say to people is that this affidavit that is attached to these arrest warrants for Mr. McKee supports the fact that this is a controlled event. This is not a random event. And this was very, very specific, and it was selective victim targeting. And that's important for the public to know that, because a lot of people, they only catch a glimpse of something or hear.
In case you're not aware, the woman that we're listening to that's being interviewed with the long red hair has her PhD. She's a criminologist. She's very good.
Hear it in passing and they think, oh gosh, is there some like serial killer running around? Apparently that is not the case at all. I don't see any evidence of that, so like people do get nervous. And the people that in that neighborhood, could be nervous until this arrest was made, thinking, is there someone going to come pound on my door and come in my house and kill me in the middle of the night? Right.
Well, and that was one of the things. I mean, Laura, there was so much armchair detective work going on this case, right? So people were like pulling 911 calls from all over the place in the neighborhood, like someone was banging on my door, someone, all these little things, and I feel like it's sort of like what you talk about so eloquently, which is the white noise around these cases.
Right. And there's no evidence so far for me as a forensic criminologist of like some, random chaotic offender loose in the neighborhood, and then all the white noise around things like that, where people create so much drama and rumors and everything around all of the characters or particular characters in any kind of case and things like that. So like, I really just wanted to, just from my perspective, which is not involved, I am not involved in this investigation in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
There's no information coming to LPA. They're not clients of ours. There's no operatives deployed in Ohio on behalf of LPA, overtly or covertly. And so, it's for me, for us, it's a targeted attack. Like I said last week,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, that's what it was last week. And that's what it still is today.
Now we have a suspect. We have Michael McKee. The suspect was the ex-husband of Monique Tepe.
I was nervous last week, that it was taking this long. I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on? Like, why is it taking this long? Who knows why? Only they do. And that's totally fine. But,
They wanted to get it right. I mean,
what did he do?
right?
Yeah, for sure. What did he do after he left the house? Did he buy something? Did he sell something? Did he move something around? Like, what did he do that showed he benefited from these victims' deaths? Because the defense is going to argue there was no reason for him to kill them. They were divorced years ago. He had no dog in the fight. He didn't care who Monique was with. They're going to argue all kinds of things.
But they're going to have GPS, they're going to have cell phones, they're going to have cameras, they're going to be looking at all of, like, actually whether or not he wants to tell us exactly what his motive was.
I
It's going to be a
agree.
matter of just.
I agree, but look what happened in the Reed case. Look what happened in Massachusetts versus Reed. Look what happened in that case. They had all kinds of interesting evidence that a lot of people believed pointed directly to Karen Reed having struck John O'Keefe and resulting in his death in the front yard of the Alberts home.
Right.
Then you have a bunch of other people who saw that same amount of evidence and said, no, that is not the same.
Well, and what you're saying is we're gonna get to the truth and justice of this case by actually getting to the crux of the matter of what he was doing in that room to kill those two people the way he did.
Yes, and it's going to take a lot of legwork,
So-
by the police department, because the prosecutor is going to need so much in order to prove the case.
Should we put it into the murder room? Is that
Yeah,
the way we should do it? Let's do it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did, Anne, was I sent you a graphic of the murder room. One of the things that I gleaned from our conversation the other day was your viewers were really interested in the murder room process, but I didn't explain it from like a step by step. I just sort of jumped around the murder room because we're constrained on time. So I wanted to maximize particular pieces of the murder room process that were going to be most valuable to your viewers at that time. And
This is such a cool process. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. I have to stop certain amount of times for copyright issues. But yeah, this is also, I also wanted to say legitimately, we heard her go through this process that she created called the murder room. And it's so fascinating. Keep listening.
And one of the things that I wanted to address was in a couple of the comments, I noticed that some people were a little confused, and it was my fault. It was my fault they were confused because I didn't explain just the structure right off the bat. So I want to do that.
Okay.
The structure of the murder room is this like triangle thing. The triangle down there at the bottom has 6 stages, and I like triangles. I like pyramids. You probably wonder why I like the shape of a pyramid. I like the shape of the pyramid because it's bottom heavy, and that's where you're building the most foundation. So there's 6 stages of the murder room, and that big pyramid at the bottom acts like your operating system on your phone. Every single thing that you're going to do in the murder room, you're going to run in and out of that pyramid. And so you can't operate an app on your phone without an operating system on your phone. Your apps have to go through the operating system. This is the same. So we use something called Bloom's taxonomy, created by Benjamin Bloom. It's what we call the theoretical framework in empirical research. And this is on like the really nerdy side of me, but just literally to explain it. So like I make sure that I'm clear for your viewers. We have 6 stages: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation. Now, when a lot of investigators, especially when they're green as grass and they come in very new, very inexperienced, they jump from knowledge to conclusion in the crime scene. That is a problem. It is a problem because when you're drawing firm conclusions in a crime scene, you don't have all the analysis and the investigation you need in the middle to basically make a sandwich. The knowledge is one piece of bread. The evaluation is the other piece of bread. Everything in the middle you have to make a sandwich. And so they kind of jump ahead. So the operating system keeps people grounded, and it's impossible to jump ahead. So in knowledge, we're gathering information. We arrive at the scene. We ask the question, who's in conflict with the victim? That's the first thing we do. We teach investigators, start the investigation where the investigation starts. That would be with the 911 call. Analyze it first before you go in the scene. The reason we do that is because we want to triage for potential staging. Staging means the manipulation of evidence prior to when the police arrive. So then we go into victimology. As you know, victimology, we use what we call a theoretical framework. We are advocates for the first 48. That needs to be done ASAP. And I go back to that analogy that you and I talked about the other day. If you found me in my kitchen and you found me dead in there, and I had a bottle of Pepsi, a can of Coke, a bottle of water, and a beer, which one is mine?
Exactly, because I need to know all your habits.
You
what you're
don't know which
doing.
one is mine.
No, I
And
don't.
if I found the same floor beside you, I wouldn't know which one is yours. The only way you can understand the crime scene is if you understand the victims first. So, not that you don't want to collect them all, but which ones are going to be most important because they don't belong to the victim. So once we process the crime scene in stages 1, 2, and 3, we move all that evidence into stage 4. We use the foundation and everything that we can prove. We put in green on the walls. We write it on green paper and we put it under the wall on the wall in the murder room under the victim's picture in a big column of green of everything we can prove. So in this case, what can we prove about Monique? We can prove that Monique was 39 years old. We can prove that she was a white female. We can prove she was the mother of 2 children. We can prove that she was a stay-at-home mom, things like that. You want to put everything that you can prove in the green column. Anything that you can sort of prove that you don't know exactly yet, you want to put in on yellow paper and put that in the yellow column. And anything about Monique that you can't prove yet, but that you get information about in your victimology, you put in red. So you have 3 columns on the wall under Monique. Then you do the same thing for Spencer. Then we do the same thing for the crime scene. Anything we can prove about the crime scene, we're going to put in green. Anything we can sort of prove, we're going to put in yellow. Anything we cannot prove yet, we're going to put in red. The red's just as important as the green because with more investigation, what happens? Sometimes the red turns green.
Right.
And it's like, okay, awesome. We all know what a stoplight is. You know, you're always waiting for it to turn green. You're sitting at the light. You're like, okay, got a red light. But you know what? That light turns green a lot, and you go. And so that's the beauty of the stoplight method, you know, of in the murder room. So in analysis, we compare the wounds from the autopsy back to the victims. What do we know about their personalities? We know that, you know, Spencer is a creature of habit per se. He is a person who shows up for work every time at about the same time. He's on time all the time.
This individual, Spencer, works with me, and he did not show up to work this morning, and we cannot get a hold of him or his family. Like, he is always on time, and he would contact us if there was any issues whatsoever. And I just don't know how else to say this. Like, we're very, very concerned because this is very out of character.
So then we would compare everything we can prove about the victim to the wounds. Like, some people are going to fight back, Dan, and some people aren't. Some people are going to run. Some people are going to hide. Some people, of course, if you're asleep, you're not going to know that you're being shot or attacked. It just depends on the scenario. If you approach a person in the Walmart parking lot, you're a killer, you got a gun. There are some people who are going to be like, just don't hurt me. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And then there are going to be the people who go, oh, you want to rock and roll? We're going to rock and roll right here. And they're going to fight back. And so the personality of the person.
Are you guys enjoying it? I hope so. If not, we'll move on to something else.
Personality of the victim is a direct divergent dualism with the offender. One person is trying to live. One person is trying to kill. They have 2 opposite goals.
Well, and with Spencer, what we do know is that, well, what we were told on the 911 call was that he was off of the bed to some degree.
There's a body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just did a wellness check. We just came here, and he appears dead.
Okay.
There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood. I can't get closer to see more than that.
Okay, so you can tell he's obviously not breathing or anything?
Yeah.
We don't know how much of a fight it went on, but we know there were multiple shots to Spencer and then 1 shot to Monique when it actually happened.
Yeah, and he may have to be neutralized. You know, if the gunshot wounds are not for the purpose of you know, emotional dumping into the victim, they're for the purpose of neutralizing and incapacitating that victim. And we won't know that. That takes us to more on the crime scene dynamics and characteristics side of the house.
Okay.
And when I talk about this warrant here in a second, I'm going to address that whole piece of this puzzle. And so once we're finished with the analysis, we analyze the autopsy report, the crime scene reports, the crime scene lab reports, all the digital evidence. We create victimology, suspectology, and then decide if we're going to recon. Then we're going to recon. In this case, we would recon. Lasers are beautiful, of course, to recon. I'm a big fan of lasers as the kaleidoscope system. That's my preference. And so I would recon this bedroom, and I would put both the victims back in place where they go at the time of the shot or the time of the shots, using the bloodstain pattern analysis, using photogrammetry, using all kinds of other different things that might aid. I'd have to know what it's a closed room. It's a small place. So it's easy to recon. When you get outside, it's harder to recon. But when you're inside, there's only certain ways by the laws of physics that something can happen. We always test multiple hypotheses because we try to think of every single possible scenario of how this could have happened, because we want to always demonstrate that we are objective, we are impartial, we do not work for the prosecution, for the defense, we don't have a dog in the fight, we are objective scientists. That's it.
You just want to know where they were when they got shot.
Yeah. I mean, that's our goal.
Right.
So then
Okay.
once we have all of that from stage 4, we plug that into stage 5, and we plug that into something called a CRB. It is a decision-making tool, basically, for how to understand conflict indicators, active conflict indicators between the victims and the offender. And then moving into resolution. How does the death of the victim resolve that conflict between and this is just a very 30,000 foot view, and
Sure.
and then on the benefit side, who benefits from the victim's death? How do they benefit? Do they benefit specifically? Do they benefit exclusively?
Mhm.
How do they benefit? And then any contradictions to the conflict, like to where it keeps us scientifically grounded. We always want to make sure that we're guarding against investigator bias. So as a scientist, it's important for me to not only tell you what it does great,
Right.
but it's also important for me to tell you what it doesn't do great.
Okay.
And so that it's we're keeping it objective and ethical, right? And so that we're applying it with impartiality, objectivity, and making sure that we're doing right by people. That we're not messing things up for people, and we're not going off on these wild goose chases. We're not sensationalizing all this stuff. Nothing aggravates me more than seeing people talking in the media that just have no idea what they're talking about, and they're just misleading the public. Because it stirs them up. It just stirs people up, and it upsets them. And it's just like the world's upsetting enough.
Well, I mean, think that also like poking holes in your own theories and analyses. If you don't do that, then I mean that in itself is a way for you to get jump to a whole new level of this kind of work.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to constantly be like every single thing. People probably think, and I don't know this, but people probably think, oh, everything Doc builds just flies. No. Not everything Doc builds flies. It might take off briefly and then go and crash and burn. And then I go in there and I look at all those ashes and I look at that pile of fire, and I'm like, okay, let me embrace the failure. That gets me closer to the right answer. It also eliminates these wrong answers, and let me now, build something better. And sometimes I think of the murder room, man, as a pyramid, and you have a key to get in the door on the very bottom level. And the pyramid has 6 floors. And you go into the bottom of the pyramid and you're in a room, and there's all kinds of stuff you have to do in there, and you got to do it properly, and you have to do it in order. And once you get all that done, you get the key to open the door to the next room on that level.
Not before.
Yep. And each key opens the door to the next room in level 1, knowledge. Once you complete knowledge and all the rooms and all the things you have to do, then move up. This is why the murder room keeps investigators from making mistakes, because it has built-in fail safes to keep them from jumping ahead, to keep them from falling behind, keep them from understanding the different. It helps them understand the difference between critical evidence and white noise. We have a whole wall in the murder room that we sequester white noise, and it's usually behind me, because the murder room is a big 900 square foot room, and then there's this gigantic round table in the center. And the round table is purposeful. There are no square tables at LPA. Everything is round. The reason they're round is because there's no head of the table. There's no head of the table because we all bear equal weight as spokes on the wheel, as experts from crime scene to courtroom. So I am no more important than you are at the murder room, because you're a 30-year veteran investigative reporter. You know your stuff inside and out. Your seat as an expert at the murder room table is just as important as mine. We bear equal weight. If we're sitting directly across from each other or catacomb or whatever, that's why it's round, because we all bear equal weight of the case in the murder room. And
I think I'd prefer to do what she's doing versus chasing the villains on the street, though. What do you think, Donna? Is that my age? Yeah, the investigator bias, and I love her process. And anyway, she teaches this to some police officers. It's clear others could use her teachings. We won't mention who, but some of the lower budget remote police agencies need her training for sure.
interdisciplinary, meaning that we draw our conclusions from each other. Like Dr. Ramsland, she might come up with her conclusion. Cheryl McCullum comes up with her. Carla Deese comes up with hers. All the different people in the murder room come up with their conclusions. Then I draw mine from theirs.
Exactly. So you're all, yeah. I mean, and it all is pieces of the puzzle at the beginning, right?
Right. So the CRB, who benefits from the victim's death in this case? Well, first of all, you've got to identify who's in conflict with the victims. So for whatever reason, which we do not know, this man allegedly, Michael McKee is in conflict with the victims, one or more victim, whether he's in conflict with Spencer or whether he's in conflict with Monique. Of course, that has yet to be told, but we know that he is allegedly definitely in conflict with them from the standpoint where we're alleging that based on the arrest warrants and what the affidavit says, that he used a firearm that he knew that was going to cause their death. On Tuesday when we talked, we identified this as being consistent with an anger retaliatory homicide. We can now take that forward and apply it to the intimate partner violence anger retaliatory homicide, which is different than just a regular anger retaliatory homicide. Okay. They're
How is it
different.
different?
Yeah. So they're different. We have a very long list of two different things, and we work on a continuum, and it's basically, this is kind of crude, but it's power and control, like this in the middle. There's power and control, because all domestic violence is about power and control. All of intimate partner violence is centered on power and control. And then in certain cases, you have what we call plus anger. And then in certain cases, you have minus anger. So it ends up looking like this.
Okay.
Okay. So imagine you've got plus anger, you got OJ on this side, and you got Scott Peterson on this side.
All right.
Okay. So that's how that works. Both those murders are about power and control. In my opinion, of course, my opinion is OJ killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. I'm never going to waver on that. That is my opinion. OJ is not only needing power and control over Nicole, but he also is angry with Nicole. Scott Peterson, opposite. Scott Peterson needs power and control over Lacey Peterson and Connor Peterson, but he is not angry with them. He just needs them out of the way because he wants a different life. He doesn't want child support. He doesn't want alimony. He doesn't want a costly divorce. He doesn't want all these things. So in this case, we do not know yet where the continuum is.
That's
For
what I was
me,
about to say. Like that's where you're at right now with this suspect.
let's talk a little bit about the actual affidavit, because
Okay.
this is important. As we all know, that in order to make an arrest, you have to have probable cause, and probable cause was established in this case, signed off by a judge. The investigator has to write an affidavit and then take it to a judge, and the judge has to decide, yes, you have probable cause. No, you don't have probable cause. Yes, I'll sign your arrest warrant. No, I won't. In this case, the investigator wrote the affidavit, took it to the judge. The judge signed off and said, yes, you may arrest this man. I think this will help tie things together for people. So this probable cause affidavit warrant is very, very, very specific, and it is 100% based on surveillance. And that is important to know, because a lot of our warrants in these kind of cases also are heavy on the physical evidence side. Like if you process the crime scene, you find DNA, you find this, you're going to see all that listed in the warrant.
Sure, but you're not seeing that here.
No, you do not see physical evidence. You do not see a confession. All you see is surveillance. And this entire arrest hinges on that surveillance, because the car was allegedly observed in the neighborhood near the Tepe's residence before the murders and then after the murders. And then he's in possession of the car in Illinois after the murders.
Correct. And they also had released that surveillance video as a person of interest, but they have not necessarily tied that surveillance video to, as far as we know, that has not been tied directly.
Do you think it's him? Do you think that's him? Do you think the good doctor, not the dentist, rather, Michael McKee, has a pigeon toe? Do you think his left toe turns in? Let me know if you think that is Michael McKee in the video. They haven't specifically said it, but it could be. What do you think?
To the car being tracked to the suspect's car.
Right. And I was talking with one of my colleagues. We were looking at the photos really closely, and one of the comments that she made was, "Do you think that looks like he's wearing a surgical mask?" And I thought that was so interesting. I have no idea. It's so grainy, I can't tell. I said, I see something, but I think it's their eyes. Like I can't tell. I'm blind as a bat anyway. So I was just
Right.
like, I can't see. But it would be interesting to know if that ends up to be something that ends up coming out that the person's wearing a surgical mask.
That'd be extraordinary considering that's what this suspect did, which is a vascular surgeon. Yeah.
And I'm curious to know if he always carries a firearm, because is this guy a person that always carries a firearm, or did, this firearm, become part of his persona specifically for this? But what this affidavit does not include was who was shot first. Um, any kind of acknowledgement of like the differential wounding, the asymmetry in the wounds, like one victim has one gunshot wound versus the 3 gunshot wounds to the other victim, and no prioritization, like who shot first, no sequence of events, that kind of thing. And from
Okay.
a forensic standpoint, that's important to recognize, not only from on the victimology side, like who's the bigger, more predominant victim, but also just from the crime scene dynamic side. And that's where we're getting into. And the other day when we talked with your viewers about, we're going to look at crime scene dynamics, we're going to look at crime scene characteristics, we're going to look at homicidal pattern, and from that we're going to extrapolate offender characteristics. And that's what we did the other day. And we ended up predicting anger retaliatory homicide, and that's what we have. Now it's a little bit different because it's a former intimate partner, which classifies it as a domestic violence homicide. Even though they're not married anymore, even though they're not together anymore, it's still a former intimate partner. So for us as criminologists, it still gets lumped into DV homicide or IPV homicide. So that's important to note. So there's nothing in the warrant about the crime scene dynamics. Speaking of, there's nothing in there about points of entry, points of exit, locations of the bodies in the home.
Why not?
Because they're holding all of that back. That's substantial evidence that they're going to present later. And they don't want anybody to be interpreting the scene.
No. And this is enough. This is enough. This is what they need to get where they need to go.
Probable cause only. This secures the arrest. This puts him in jail. This holds him in Illinois. This gets him extradited back to Ohio. That's it. That's it. There's no discussion about the motive. There's no discussion about the relationships. There's no relational link other than, yes, this is Monique's ex-husband. So there are so many things that could have been in the warrant, in the affidavit, that, I've been doing this for 25 years and I've seen lots and lots and lots of affidavits for intimate partner homicide. This one is very, very small. And the reason it's small is because that is purposeful and deliberate by the DA's office and by the investigators, because they're going to try their case in the courtroom as they should. But from my side of the house, like as a criminologist, and, I'm looking at it, from a general person standpoint, not involved in the investigation. These are the things that I see that you would see. Because I can tell you, there are plenty of warrants that when I was in the DA's office there working, that the investigators drew that had tons of, like, we found blood here, we found bullets here.
Absolutely.
I can appreciate why they're keeping it close to the vest, because this case is so widespread. It's for the trial. Absolutely, my dear. It's for the trial. What do y'all think? Are we going to watch the trial on this channel? I certainly think we're going to watch the trial on this channel. Unless, of course, the judge keeps the cameras out of the courtroom. And we have already heard predictions. Thomas, like, yes. I'm still waiting for my colossal effing popcorn with KP and CP. Anyways, we will watch the trial here. I'm certainly hoping that the prediction, I think I got it, honey. I think the prediction, I did get that one. Thank you. I got that one. I will, as soon as I'll try to do it. I'll let you know if I can do it while we're live. Yeah, the prediction was, or at least one of the experts we listened to in one of the lives earlier, I think it was last week, said could be as early as September in the courts in the fall, which would be crazy, but I'd like to see it too. Do you think they're going to go for the death penalty? I'm not so sure they won't in this case. I'm not so sure they won't. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's keep watching.
All this stuff, it's really blown out. And in this one, this is not enough to convict. This is not enough for prosecution. This is enough for arrest only. And my former boss, he's retired now, he's the head of legal for LPA, Michael Parker. He always says, you know what, you can arrest a ham sandwich, but you cannot prosecute a ham sandwich.
No, and one would hope that the prosecutor sees a lot more than this right now.
Oh, there's so much more that they're holding. And so all they wanted in this public facing document was just enough to explain what they had to explain to make the arrest. It is a goal-oriented homicide, specifically for 2 targeted people by one particular offender. And that's what the warrant is saying. We're not going after 10 people for this. We're going after one person and arresting him because we believe he is the one responsible for the deaths of these 2 victims.
Well, so Laura, at this point, like we've got this affidavit. As the investigator, what are you nailing down at this point in order to make sure that you have the right person?
So now that we have a suspect, now we're going to run suspectology. So on Tuesday, what we did was what we took from the dynamic, we used victimology, crime scene dynamics, crime scene characteristics, and homicidal pattern. We used those 4 things to develop a list of potential characteristics or ideas about what kind of homicide this could be. Now we know that this is most likely an anger retaliatory homicide. I mean, what else would it be for? You've got a former intimate partner. And I don't know anything about their divorce. I know, I've got the file here. And like you said, like we were talking earlier about the fact that this looks like a standard PO. Every single thing that that we investigated on the victim, we're going to do the exact same investigation on the suspect. And that way we can build out the timeline. The timeline is going to have 7 timelines. The biggest timeline is going to be the macro timeline, and that's going to be like the big milestones. When did Monique and Michael meet? When did they start dating? When did they get married? When was the trouble? When did the trouble start in the marriage? Then when did she file for divorce? And when did they separate? That kind of thing. Then when did she meet Spencer? When did they start dating? When did they get married? So all these big macro milestones are going to be part of the chronology system, which is just a fancy name for timelines. But we do 7 timelines here in the murder room because you need them all to explain to a jury why someone needed to be dead and how it is exactly that this particular offender, that the suspect, the defendant now in this case, the defendant is guilty of what the prosecution's alleging he or she is guilty of. So me on my side of the house as a forensic criminologist, I'm gonna be looking at the anger retaliatory homicide as it applies to intimate partner violence homicide, which is actually my specialty, which is what the murder room was originally built for.
Well, and so we go back to how we're going to be looking at a relationship, and basically when we talked about this on Tuesday, we were looking at the victimology, and that was the cornerstone of who these 2 people were that were murdered,
right?
And their relationship to a suspect, but to whoever murdered them, and trying to understand what was going on in their life when this happened. Are we still dealing with that victimology, or we've gotten there?
Still the core. It's still your foundation. You're still bouncing everything off of it as a litmus test. So you're still using it as the foundation of that stage 4 analysis. And you're still taking information that's coming into the murder room and you're comparing it back to those victims. How does that fit in with the victims and who they are? So that foundation is solid. What you built in that first 48 hours serves as your foundation. And of course, as you know, there's things on the wall that are in yellow and red about your victims. And as your investigation continues, those things will hopefully turn green in a lot of things. But it's normal to have a murder room set up where you look at the walls, you're always going to have some red. You're never going to know everything because none of us were witnesses to the incident. So there's always going to be things that are only known by the victims and by the killer. Yes, because he's clearly the last person to see them alive. One of the reasons that Mr. McKee could potentially be upset with Spencer Tepe is if he perceived that, Monique and Michael had a very bad relationship. Let's just say that. I don't know if they did or not.
Well,
But
she spoke in like video that we've seen with her. We have heard her talk about how she had, and we don't know if it was in relation to Mr. McKee or not, but that she had relationships that had gone badly and that it ended in a lot of tears and a lot of emotion. And she actually says this in a video, like as she's marrying Spencer, and how Spencer sort of was her new, hope for the future.
Spencer, what can I say? From day one, I knew you were something special. I had quite a journey to get to you, countless bad bumble dates, wrong relationships, and waterfalls of tears. But it was worth every cringing second because it led me to you.
So she definitely talked about having, and obviously if she went through a divorce, she was going through a tough time with, it didn't work out. So there was already something
Gonna
going
work
on.
out quickly. All the things about Mr. McKee are gonna be brought into the murder room, put on the wall. Same thing as we did for the victims. He goes on the other side of the wall. So like you've got them, and then you've got the crime scene, and then you've got him, so that you can see it all on one big wall. Everybody, all like you're right there in front of your face. Everybody, what's in green, what's in yellow, what's in red for every single person. Prosecutor walks in there, they look at the wall, they see what they can prove and take it into the courtroom. They see what they can't prove, they see what they can't take into the courtroom. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, with our suspect, take me through like what it looks like that they're looking for right now to understand why this murder happened, I guess. Is that
And in my opinion, as we talked about the other day, murder happens in a sequence, right? You've got a trigger, then you've got an emotion, then you've got a thought, then you've got a behavior. And in this case, they have the behavior of murder. They've got that one. They can check it off. They've got the thought, which was also murder, because this is probably what they're going to frame as premeditated murder, right? Because this is like a person who drives over to the Tepe residence, parks in the neighborhood, walks. And do we know how far he walked?
No.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see, because it's not uncommon for an anger retaliatory offender to walk to and from the scene.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon for them to park. I've seen them park up to a mile away in my career, walk through woods to get to the victim's house, kill, walk back through the woods, get back in the car, go. And then of course, like much shorter distances as well. But the long
Up to a mile away. I wonder if she's ever seen anybody rent an Airbnb down the road. I'm so curious to know. That's a far stretch, but did he rent that Airbnb? Be very interesting to find out. But of course, the police know where he parked, right? Because they tracked him on camera, leaving the car that he rented, or was it his car? I don't know if that's actually 100% confirmed whether it was a rental car. Leaving the car and going back to the car. So it sounds like they have a fair amount of evidence, but I'd be really curious when we do find out. I doubt he was at the Airbnb, but you never know. He seems like the creepy creepoid, just like the kind of person that would be watching them through the binoculars the night before.
longest I've seen is about a mile. And then they're going to look. I would personally be looking for traffic infractions. Any infractions that traffic stops for Mr. McKee after he left the residence.
Yeah, you said that sometimes they get all worked up and end up
They're euphoric from the
Right.
kill. They're euphoric. They've got all these endorphins and all this adrenaline and everything because they feel so much better, because this is like such a goal-oriented thing for him. Okay, I'm done. I've accomplished my goal. We're going to be looking at everything we can all the way back to the defendant's childhood. So for us, we go back to like high school. We go back to we interview high school teachers. We interview all kinds of people looking for personality traits, because they're consistent across the board. Like who you are is kind of who you are. Now, I'm not saying that like kids can't be bad, and have attitudes as teenagers or something like that. And then they grow up, they go out in the world, and they become reasonable adults.
in this case, he became a surgeon.
Right, exactly. So like, who was he as a child? Who was he as a child? We're going to map him, track him, and measure him all the way through using the same system. We use victimology. We just literally ask all the same questions about the suspect. It's the same study. So then we're going to bring that back into the murder room and move that forward. And in this case, we're going to be looking for lots of other intimate partner relationships that Mr. McKee has had. We're going to want to speak with every single person. We're going to want to know if he ever put a firearm to anyone's body part, head, chest, any body part. Is there any particular language that they use? So like they have like these routines. In this kind of offender, they typically use no direct. If they use language in the scene, it's short and direct. Don't talk, don't move. Remember in Delphi, down the hill.
Yeah, I completely remember that. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever heard. I think that's one of the things that unfortunately the children, the 4-year-old at least, has been questioned about, was whether or not they heard any last words at all from the suspect or the
That
child's
was
parents.
Right. And it's typically
that was very creepy. In Delphi. Oh man, I'm just getting a really bad vibe. I feel like we reported it here. I should pull it up here tonight, maybe tomorrow, because I'm going to do a long live, probably one of the last lives, long deep dives on the Tepe murders. I'm going to put together a compilation of the best podcasts up to date, and probably we'll go back into Gus Limo after that. But yeah, it's interesting to think whether or not, when we reported here about the neighbor hearing the Tepes talking and seeing them talking to somebody at the night before outside for 30 minutes. And I'm so curious to know if that was him. Was that him? Did he show up claiming he had a problem? And they let him in. And because I just keep thinking to the cops' time frame of 2 to 5, a.m. And I can't help but think, did they watch him get out of a car at 2 a.m. and get back in the car at 5 a.m.? And we know this time of death was so specific, 3:52. Was it 3:52? I think 3:52, which to me, I'm thinking Apple Watch. Somebody here suggested that, I think, to me, or an in-house baby monitor or an in-house security camera, which has been reported that they had an in-house security camera in order to be able to be that specific. Now, they also don't have more than one time. They don't have 2 times, which would suggest shots, bang, bang. So I don't know. Did he pick the locks? Did he rewire the security alarm? I can't imagine that they left the door unlocked with babies there, but maybe they did. He got into a basement window. How do you think he got in, everybody? Do you think he stalked them and then he walked over there as we reported? And was he the guy that was supposedly the neighbors saw talking outside with the Tepes for half an hour the night before? And then they just let him in, not knowing? God almighty. I can't. That one is the worst case scenario. And it's somehow, I just have a feeling that's what happened. Because there was also reports that he left food on the counter for the kids. And I don't know, man. He seems like anybody that waits 8 years, 8 years and drives 6 hours. Do you think they just want to go in, shoot him up and leave? I don't know. To me, I can see 8 hours of him pent up anger. And Donna, you think, yeah, you heard, yeah, do you think that he just walked in there after driving 5.5, 6 hours and 8 years of anger and resentment and lawsuits and not being able to get his medical license and not having another failed relationship? And here's this perfect ex that he didn't want to let go of 8 years ago, happy as can be. I doubt, I have no idea in criminology, but my gut instinct tells me he did not just drive 6 hours to shoot them and walk out the door. I doubt it. I wonder if she's going to tell us in the next 9 minutes left of this video. I'm so curious.
These kind of offenders most often do not use language, or they use very direct language. Short, don't talk, don't move, walk forward, sit down, that kind of stuff. Don't scream, don't, whatever. Like they use very direct, pointed language. That's the power side. So murders can be usually power interest or anger interest. In this case, because it's related to IPV, we always have to assume there's an element of power and control here.
Intimate partner violence.
Yes, IPV, intimate partner violence, domestic violence is often interchanged with that, but of course, domestic can carry over into like other types of relationships that are domestic. But we're going to be obviously looking for the firearm evidence. Does that tie him to the scene?
Well, and there was no forced entry, Laura. There was no forced entry in this case. I guess that could mean a lot of different things.
It can. There's a lot of reasons why there's sometimes no forced entry.
Okay.
So they're going to be looking at that. But I think one of the bigger things is they are going to be trying to want to map the firearm and where did that firearm come from? Who does it belong to? Taking those projectiles and being able to compare it back to any firearm that they recover that is part of the environment of the defendant at this point, trying to see if that matches, the actual firearm that fired those particular projectiles. A lot of times, when people drive away from scenes like this, they discard evidence on the way out. So they, dismantle firearms and throw them over bridges, like in water. They bury things, they burn things, they do all kinds of things. We saw this in Idaho where they alleged that the defendant in that case traveled around like doing
Koberger.
evidence. Yes, he was like doing particular things with the evidence after he left the home where the girls and the one male victim lived. So like all of those kinds of things, we're going to be mapping that, tracking that, and getting that timeline tighter until it's down what we call the peri-mortem timeline, which is a minute by minute 24-hour timeline. Then we take that down and we crunch it down. So eventually we end up with 7 timelines. We turn this over to the prosecutor uses that to be able to lay this out, and then we move it forward to conflict resolution benefit in stage 5 in synthesis. We've gone through knowledge, understanding, application, analysis. Now we're synthesizing all the critical evidence, because in stage 4, we've now sequestered all the white noise and we just have the critical stuff. We're turning that over to the prosecutor and we're saying, here's your case. Okay. Here's everything that you've got. And then they, as prosecutors with their skill set, which is obviously different than yours, different than mine, they're going to say, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I get this. I get this. Okay, here's where you guys need to flesh these pieces out a little bit more. They pitch it back to forensic pathology. They pitch it back to forensic criminology. They pitch it back to the coroner's office. They pitch it back to wherever.
100%. And I would think also right now from what we're seeing, just on what we're seeing in the affidavit, one of the critical points is going to be where that car sped up, where it slowed down. I mean, if they have access to the car, everywhere it went, they're going to have to track every single mile and that car drove at least, I think, 8 hours up and 8 hours back from the scene, because we're going all the way from their home in Columbus to Rockford, Illinois.
Right. They're going to be trying to tie the physical evidence to this particular defendant, and then also have that supported by the surveillance evidence, which of course is the foundation for their probable cause for arrest. But they know this warrant is indicative of, okay, this is enough to arrest him. Now we need to go forward and figure out how we're going to prosecute him. They know this. They already know this. This is on the inside. And I can guarantee you 100% everything that we're talking about and that we know, they're all looking at us saying, yeah, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And I agree. I agree with them, because I know this, because I've been on the inside of that courthouse, not in Ohio, but just hypothetically speaking, I know that to be true, because on the inside of my own investigations, what was going on the outside was
On the
not
public side,
Yes. But it's important for the public to try to understand this from the perspective of, there's no rampant, insane, murderer running around Wineland Park.
Well, and right now, like, we've got a couple of minutes left. Can you tell me what we should be looking for to be coming out soon for us to better understand? I mean, we know this is the suspect is an ex-husband, that they had gone through a divorce, that he had been living in several states. What should our viewers be watching for right now as this case goes forward and they start prosecution and get it going?
I'm going to be looking at for post-crime behaviors. That's where, like, going back to the mapping, I'm going to be looking for post-crime behaviors. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing. The stuff that may be coming out is going to be how he benefited immediately or specifically or exclusively from the deaths of Monique and Spencer Tepe. They're going to be, that's what I'm going to be looking for in the post-crime stuff, where, there is no murder if nobody's benefiting. So, like, if everybody else is cleared that might have had a problem with Monique or had a problem with Spencer, then, okay, how does this guy benefit from their deaths? Is it just because he's angry with them? He was angry with Spencer for being the next person that she dated or something like that? What in the post-crime behaviors supports the fact that that this McKee guy is actually the person who killed them. That's what I'm going to be looking for, because that piece has to be extremely strong or it falls apart. And that's where we get what we call contradictions at the end. That's why we guard for investigator bias, where we don't want the wrong person pursued, right?
Absolutely. And you don't want them siloed thinking it has to be this person and it can't be,
You have to be sure that it's that person. So when you've got the arrest now, okay, great. You've got the arrest, but what supports and actually is going to be used for prosecuting and proving, because the surveillance is only probable cause. Probable cause doesn't prove your case in court. Probable cause is only for the purpose of an arrest.
So they've got a lot of work to do.
A whole lot of work to do. One thing too, and I think that's helpful to viewers to know, and this is something that happens to LPA all the time. People bring cases to LPA and they tell us, we know
Sorry, everybody. I wasn't muted. I lost the screen. I had to take a call. I got the job. I got the job. I got a job. Yay! Got a job. Sorry. Yeah. So I got the job. So we're going to go back on. So it was the last of that interview. And while I was trying to get it on this one, excuse me, thank you, everybody. That'll relieve a lot of my stress. Thank you. You want to know what I'm going to be doing? What I'm going to be doing? You're going to laugh. You're going to laugh. Okay. Careful not to pull a groin muscle here. Because you're going to laugh, because yours truly is going to be a retail sales clerk and a delivery driver for a weed store in downtown Ottawa. Oh, shit. I'm going to be delivering weed. I'm going to be a really happy driver. Oh, my God. Yeah, it's legal in Canada, by the way. It's legal in Canada. Okay, let's get going. We're going to have one more video here. It's a half an hour. We'll finish that up for the night. And we'll finish that up for the night. Sorry. No, it's a big store. They have 7 locations across the province of Ontario, and they have 2 drivers, 2 cars. You use their gas, their car, their insurance. You get all the tips 100%. It's like pretty decent hourly wage. And so it's a driver job and a cashier job. And it's about all I can handle right now with my PTSD. I'm super stressed a lot, as you can still see. I'm getting better, but I won't be using any CBD while I'm driving. But I get a really good tap the thumbs up button like a boss. I get a really good discount on products. So I might show up to the streams a little wonky. Shit. Okay, let's go. Sorry. I can't believe I'm going to be working at a weed store. Okay, let's go.
Were there warning signs before Michael McKee, Dr. McKee, killed Monique and Spencer Tepe? Because now it seems that everyone is saying they saw all these signs. But prior to that, no one was reporting on this. When violent acts occur between former partners, they almost never come out of nowhere. In most domestic-related homicides, there are predictable warning signs, patterns of behavior that escalate over time. Today, we're examining the warning indicators that investigators look for in the cases like the killings of Monique Tepe and her husband, Spencer Tepe, and the alleged role of her ex-husband, Michael McKee. This is not about hindsight bias. This is about understanding behavioral red flags that law enforcement, courts, and families must recognize before violence turns fatal. In my time on the NYPD, I saw the response to domestic violence incidents change over the years, where there was sort of a laissez-faire type response where try to mediate it if you can walk out of there without having put handcuffs on somebody. That was what was preferred early on in my police career. And then it did a full 360 where there was almost a zero tolerance, because what investigators and researchers found out was that when you didn't address the domestic violence incident through law enforcement involvement, i.e. arrest, that increased the homicide numbers. Some of these little disputes, these little domestic disputes, turned into more violence, and then the violence turned into murders. So the posture of police, not just in New York City, but across the nation, changed almost overnight, where it was almost encouraged to take enforcement against the perpetrator in these domestic violence incidents. One of the most consistent predictors of intimate partner violence is refusal to accept the end of a relationship. Attempts to maintain control after a divorce, repeated or unnecessary contact. Emotional fixation on the former partner's life. In cases like this, continued involvement or monitoring, especially after remarriage, raises immediate concern. When an ex-partner struggles with loss of status, control, or identity, resentment can build rapidly. A key investigative focus is how often and why contact continued. Red flags include contact unrelated to the children or legal matters, reaching out during emotional milestones, holidays, anniversaries, new relationships, attempts to reinsert oneself into daily life. So these are all triggers, and these are all the red flags. So we're going to discuss this. And were these things noticeable with Michael McKee, Dr. Michael McKee, vascular surgeon? Or now is it just noticeable because everyone knows what occurred? So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your thoughts, hold on to your prayers. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Folks, I'm going to bring with me today retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney of law. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Good morning. Good to see you. Thank you for having me on today.
Mike, I think that you were on the NYPD some of the same years I was.
Yes.
And disturbingly, we saw domestic violence, homicides rise. And as a response to that, it became almost a zero tolerance to domestic violence, and that patrol units, when they responded to even a report of domestic violence, even if it was unfounded, they were required to take a complaint report to document it, because I guess the department was afraid that police would do what we would call shit can reports of it. So they made responding patrol officers make a report, whether it was unfounded, whether the person didn't want to make a report, just to have it on record. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, I remember in the 4-6 driving by maybe wrong, bad addresses, wrong addresses. There'd be an empty lot there. You still wrote a quick outline of what we call a UF 61, a complaint report. And and you handed it in and it got a serial number just to document the fact that a police officer was dispatched to an 911 call of domestic violence. And even if you got there and it was unfounded, the building doesn't even exist, it doesn't matter. You had to write it down and put it down on paper. So if there was ever to be any litigation, civil or criminal, later on, you could cover the police department's ass. That's CYA.
Absolutely. Folks, just a reminder, the Police Off the Cuff podcast is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. And folks, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, make lots of comments, share. That helps our show. It shares, puts it out, and the algorithm grows. So I just think, in this case, it's quite interesting, Mike, because now all of a sudden, just as everyone has said, I knew it was him, no one knew it was him during this investigation. Everyone's coming out of the woodwork now saying, I knew there was a problem. No, you didn't, or else you would have called. As far as I know, there was no complaint report against Michael McKee. There was no order of protection. There was no talk when this first happened that he was suspect numero uno. But all of a sudden, everyone's coming out of the woodwork. Oh, yes, we knew it was him. He was abusive. He was this, he was that. But then why didn't you say something before this, even if messages appear civil on the surface, investigators in regards to domestic violence look for frequency, persistence, and timing. These patterns can indicate emotional dependency or unresolved grievance, both risk factors for escalation. Quick reminder, if you're looking for real crime insight like YouTube theories, this channel is different. I'm a retired NYPD sergeant, and on Police Off the Cuff, we analyze cases the way cops and prosecutors do, what matters, what doesn't, and what the internet gets wrong. If that's the perspective you want, subscribe now, because this isn't entertainment, it's experience. So, Mike, again, I can't and I know there's going to be a lot of people in our audience, and sadly, that are victims of domestic violence and have experience in this. So if we can help you through our advice, I feel very good about that. But in this case, again, we can't just say, and people can't just come out of the woodwork and say, all the signs were there, but because truthfully, they were not. And now people are coming out and saying they are. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, when you look at this couple, you've got Mike McKee and Monique. They were married years ago. Neither one of them had any real money. I think he was still in medical school. I think they were living in Virginia. They get married. They separate within about 7 months. It takes about a year after that to finalize everything. And they base their grounds for divorce on incompatibility. There's no objective evidence that I know of in any court records that would indicate that he was verbally, physically, emotionally, sexually abusive towards her. They separated. 10 years later, about 8 years later, here we are. And this just obviously, because he's the killer, it's considered a domestic violence kind of context murder. But at the time, the prosecutor's going to be looking now, the detectives are going to be looking, because if you want to say to the jury that domestic violence, jealousy, and rage and revenge were the motivating factors, you have to objectively prove that in court. And if you don't have any like hate emails, hate text messages, anything like that, the prosecutor's not going to go with that angle later on. Hindsight's 2020. Everybody's a genius after the wheel's been invented. But before then, people were like, yeah, we have no idea who this could have been. The police know that exes are always up there on the list. But even for the detectives here, an 8-year separation between the divorce and the homicide, unless there's something objective, he would not pop up to the #1 spot in the suspect list.
That's absolutely true. This is Banfield today, and everyone's talking about this,
No kidding. No kidding, he wouldn't pop up on anybody's radar after 8 years. Yet, we also heard, I think it was yesterday, one of the experts say, it's also not that surprising, right? I think it was the FBI girl from that Brian Enton interviews, who's been really hands-on in this case. I think she was also lives near the Reiners. She was in the Reiners. Yeah. Exactly, Donna. I'm wondering if it was the lawsuit that triggered that, But anyways, sad. The whole thing is so sad.
Yeah, the signs were there. Were they there? Okay. The warning signs. Now everyone's noticing them, but prior to this, they were not. This is from Banfield.
Hitler, a forensic criminologist who's been writing about this very case. Laura, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate this. Look, I spoke with the Tepe's brother-in-law a week ago, and it seemed as though there was no one on the radar for the family members as to who could have done something this awful. But now he's saying that there were these red flags, that Dr. McKee had threatened Monique Tepe's life when she was Monique McKee. And I just wonder, how red a flag is it when someone makes a death threat to the person they're married to?
Well, Ashley, thank you so much for having me. Yes, so absolutely, the death threats in an intimate partner relationship are basically a huge warning sign. And it's always best to view them in context of it's shifting, like the conflict between them is shifting between emotional conflict to potentially a behavioral conflict, where maybe an abuser is going to then move from just thinking about hurting the victim to actually acting, and that becomes lethal for a domestic violence homicide victim.
And I suspect if there's going to be a trial, I mean, that's, obviously there can always be a plea bargain, as we saw in Koberger, but if there's going to be a trial, I sense that a lot of this stuff is going to come out in court, the things that were said, the things that were threatened, etc. And they matter to juries. But I was really taken by that wedding video, not just the words when she said wrong relationships and waterfalls of tears led me to you, Spencer, but she started to cry and continued to cry all the way through that. And I just wanted to get your professional assessment of that.
Yes, that struck me as well. And it struck me that the words that she chose, she said, bad bumble dates, wrong relationships. And she put the S on the end of it, Ashley. And I thought that was interesting, where she said wrong relationships. But, did she mean a wrong relationship? And that's one of the things I've been thinking about recently. In addition to that, then she said the last part of it was about the waterfall of tears. And so for me, it kind of, the summarizing statement that kind of went through my mind was that she went on a journey, and there was a tremendous amount of emotional growth through trial and error.
As there always is in any marriage and any divorce, there is, but that doesn't mean it's going to go to the next level, right? And the breakup is going to cause a murder. In this case, it apparently did. I mean, it did. There were murders, but what do we know specifically? Can we point to a specific event, or that the divorce, in fact, was what led to the murders of Spencer Tepe and Monique Tepe? I just like to also mention, when we talk about domestic violence, what is it? Well, on the NYPD, they list, I think it's 6 things: harassment, 1st or 2nd degree; assault, 2nd and 3rd; disorderly conduct; assault, attempted assault, 2nd; reckless endangerment, and menacing. It's I always remember the acronym HADARM. So there's a lot of things there. So menacing, what is menacing? Is putting someone in fear of their life through, threatening them with an instrument, a knife, or a bat, or even your hands could be considered menacing. An assault, 2nd, is a felony. Assault, 3rd, is a misdemeanor. Reckless endangerment, I think, is 1st and 2nd. Menacing, a disorderly conduct. Disorderly conduct usually has to be committed in front of the law enforcement officer, or it's not chargeable. But in a domestic violence incident, it's different. It is chargeable. Just, if you go to someone's apartment and disorderly conduct the statute is causing public inconvenience, annoyance, and alarm. But obviously, if it's inside your apartment, it's not public. So it sort of was tailored to a domestic violence incident. So those are the charges. But as I said earlier on, they were encouraged in NYPD, and I think police departments across this nation, not to walk away from domestic violence incidents, but encourage officers to make the arrest. Mike.
Yeah, Banfield, kind of slides over the fact that if you have these suspicions, where is the objective evidence from 10 or 12 years ago, when they were married and before the divorce? Who can testify to these things? Do you have any paper on this? Do you have a paper trail? Do you have emails? You can know something, but a prosecutor has to prove it. So even if the prosecutor knows what the background is, what the motive is, if they can't objectively prove it to the jury, then it's not going to be provable. And if there was any sort of, like, say, 10-year-old letter saying, I hate you, I wish you were dead, and it was written on a piece of paper, is that going to come in as evidence? Or, is that going to be unduly prejudicial to the defendant? The defense attorney is going to try to challenge that. So it is really difficult to get these cases. You may have made arrests. I've made arrests where the case just falls apart immediately when the victim refuses to participate in the prosecution. In this case, you have to establish credible evidence that's relevant and reliable. And if you don't have that, It may be that this was caused by, what we talk about, jealousy, anger, revenge, but you won't be able to prove that. So it's going to be difficult to prosecute as a domestic violence homicide. It might be better if the prosecutor doesn't even go there and just proves the murder as it happened without the motive. That might make it a little bit.
Mike, they could prosecute it as a burglary murder.
True. Yeah.
I don't know. I think they have motive. I don't know. I don't know. These guys, I'm gonna end it here and let you guys go and finish watching it there if you want. I find these guys a little always on Banfield's case, a little critical of Banfield. I kind of like Ashley. You guys like Ashley Banfield? What do you think? Do you find this a super interesting podcast? If you do, there's 15 minutes left. We will continue to watch it, or would you like the link? Is that, I like the dots. Is that supposed to be the new look? Sorry, you want to keep watching it, Donna? Is that a yes to that? Is that a yes to that? You guys get to rule. Tomorrow we're going to do a long stream, start at 11, maybe 10:30, probably 11. Just let me know yes or no if that's what you want, Donna. I'm not sure what the yeses do.
Because burglary, unlawfully enter or remain in the building with intent to commit a crime therein. This would be a burglary first degree, since he was armed with a firearm and used the firearm and caused death. So besides the murder first degree, because of the underlying crime of burglary first degree, they don't need to go to the DB thing, but that sort of proves an ongoing course of conduct. However, you're 100% right. There was no paper on this.
Yeah.
They always want paper. Did you make a complaint report? Did you go to the police? Did you report it? No. But now all of a sudden, family members are coming out of the woodwork as on this little snippet we're going to play.
Spencer and Monique Tepe's brother-in-law tells NBC News when the family first learned the couple had been murdered, only one possible suspect came to mind: Monique's ex-husband, Michael McKee.
That never came up during the investigation. Never came up. Could they perhaps have told detectives that privately? Absolutely.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for the link there. Thank you, Marie and Donna. I think you had it up there too. Thank you, honey. Marie, thank you. Thank you, my dear. Okay, everybody. I'm going to call it now. I'm not, like, if you want to go see this interview, that's fine, but it's not earth-shattering. It's the only one I hadn't pre-watched before coming on the live today. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. I think tomorrow will probably, unless you guys say otherwise, probably be our last long deep dive in the Tepe murders, unless there's more that comes out. And if it continues to have new information coming out, we will continue to cover it. And then I'm going to not be able to run 2 lives a day for a few days, but but I'm going to do 2 lives probably as long as, if this is running, the Tepe murders is still running, I'll run it and I'll start Gus if it's still going on in the next couple days. Otherwise, we're going to move from Tepe to Gus. Thank you, my dear. Oh yeah, my baby's army. I wanted to say you made a really good point about he must have known the code, because you're right. That was a really good point I wanted to say. He wouldn't have taken the 6-hour drive if he didn't. Okay, everybody. Good night. Thanks for being here, everybody. See you tomorrow morning. Love and light.